Welcome to Celebrate Truth Radio. I'm your host, Robbie Davidson. This is episode 92. We are into 2021. Can you believe it? 2020 is done, and we're into 2021. Unbelievable year. Just an incredible year. We're moving into such a incredible time, moving into 2021. And my guest tonight, he's no stranger to Celebrate Truth Radio. He's been on multiple times. It's a real pleasure to bring him on tonight so that he can go through the question, is America done? Now, I've stated on many broadcasts where I stand on this issue. A lot of people have heard where I'm at. And maybe I'm going to have a bit of a change of my mind because Rich is going to bring out quite a few different scenarios and a lot of compelling evidence to support the fact that things might not be as they seem. And they're going to get interesting. Real quick before I bring on Rich, just want to say hi to everyone in the chat. Thanks so much. Good to see Patricia Steer in the house. Thanks to all my great mods. Roderick. We've got a lot of people here joining on YouTube. Thanks to everyone listening on Revolution Radio. This is just an amazing time, guys. We're moving into such an exciting point in history. But without further ado, I just want to bring him on. I want to get right into it. We got a lot of stuff to cover tonight. 2021, is America done? A lot of stuff's going to take place here in the next few days, few weeks, maybe even a few months. We got Richard Hopkins, Mr. Thrive and Survive, as he's known on YouTube, as my special guest this evening. This is going to be a good one. So I want to really quickly just make sure that I get something here. All right. One moment here. I'm just going to make sure that we get on to... Sorry about this. I'm just getting a message from the producer, the studio, making sure that we get on to the correct one. So, let's see. Anyways, you guys are all tuning in. Not sure what's going on, but having a hard time here connecting to the station. Trying to get connected to it right now. They're having some technical issues or something. It's saying it's not available. Want to bring them on. Let me just type this in. Studio. All right. Let's try this one. All right. I think we've joined. We had to go in with an old studio link up. Sorry, guys. Just threw me off track there. Anyways, the producer was just reaching out and saying that the connection to the studio wasn't working. We're in Studio A. We want to make sure that we're switched there. So now you should be hearing me on Revolution Radio. Sorry about the interruption, guys. Let's get right into it. We got Richard Hopkins, Mr. Thrive and Survive. He's known on YouTube. Make sure his link is in the description on YouTube. You can subscribe to his YouTube channel. And he's going to come on and get into a lot of stuff. We're going to get into so much stuff tonight. So let's just get right into it. Here we go. Mr. Thrive and Survive, Richard Hopkins. Thank you and welcome to Celebrate Truth Radio.
Well, thank you, Robbie. Happy New Year, and good to be back with you once again.
Yeah, it's so great to have you here. Like I said, want to get you on tonight and then do the panel show here in another week. And so much is going to take place, but I just want to get right into it. We were talking a little bit before we went live, just about how many things you see that are about to take place. And maybe you can just start from the beginning on everything that you've been kind of seeing and what you think is going to be taking place here in the next few days.
Yeah, well, I think what I'd like to do is give the audience a little perspective of how important this coming week is going to be. And I feel the hand of God is upon the Republic as it has been in the past. And just to give some sort of perspective with that, going all the way back to the founding of the country, you had George Washington, who was, by all metrics that you would measure warfare, he was losing the war. In fact, what he was doing was he was mostly running from the British. He was avoiding conflict because they weren't ready. The troops had extremely low morale. They weren't being paid by the Continental Congress, and they were, almost to the point of mutiny. In fact, they did have small mutinies in the army at Valley Forge, and then suddenly, through one of his spies, and this is where I think the hand of God came in to start the country, they found out that the Hessians, the Germans, were going to be in Trenton, New Jersey over Christmas. So what Washington did with that information was, in the middle of the night in a mini ice age, well, we were going through a 100 minimum back then, he crossed the nearly frozen Delaware River. And as the weather would be, fog developed. So that shielded his movements from the British, who were on the other side of the river. And so he crossed in the middle of the night. He set up fires over there so that the British would think they camped right there. And by the time the British were able to cross and could see that they were there, it was too late. He was already in Trenton, New Jersey. He had caught the Hessians by surprise. And then he went on to defeat the British in New Jersey as well. That was the first real breaking point for the United States that allowed the Union to come into be. And if it wasn't for that, we probably wouldn't have come into to be what we are. So you have this little intervention that happened that didn't seem like anything at the time. Mm-hmm. The next case in history and I won't get into too much detail, but probably the Civil War. There was the Battle of Antietam, which was really the turning point that saved the Union. If they had lost that, then the capital would have probably fallen, and then the Union would have split apart. When you get into looking at that too, there was obviously it seemed like the hand of God was into that. World War II is probably the next one, and which, as most people don't realize, was a resource war. You had Germany and Japan both realized that they didn't have the resources necessary to survive as nations for different reasons. And most people, Hollywood has glorified our fight in Europe and against, basically the whole Atlantic campaign. You always see, D-Day invasion and Bastogne and all the different things like that Hollywood has glorified in Europe. But the real turning point and the real danger was really in the Pacific with the Japanese. The Japanese realized, probably before anybody else, that the new warfare would be one with naval aircraft and aircraft carriers. They had 7 carriers in the Pacific. And they made the smart move where Hitler did not. Hitler wasn't able to secure resources such as oil and metals and different things like that and food to be able to feed his people. He was too deranged and went towards Moscow and Leningrad and things like that, instead of securing all the resources. Now, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, they also attacked in Guam, the Philippines, Southeast China, all the different islands south of the Philippines, even to the doorstep of Australia. And what that allowed the Japanese to do was on the very first day of the war, they were able to secure the resources they needed to fight a long war. A lot of those islands had rare earth metals, other metals they needed for ammunition. It had, most importantly, oil. And that's why they went to war with the United States anyway. It was really, like I said, a resource war. Mm-hmm. But what most people don't realize is they really wanted to get the aircraft carriers at Pearl Harbor, but all 3, what a small number, all 3 of the aircraft carriers were at sea at Pearl Harbor. And that's the story for another time. That kind of indicates, did Roosevelt know what was coming? Mm-hmm. In any case, the Japanese had 7 carriers, and they were superior carriers. Mm-hmm. And by the hand of God, we were able to decipher little pieces of the Japanese military code. And they came up with this AF. They were going to attack AF. And we didn't know what that was. And a miracle really happened where Admiral Halsey said, all right, let's make up a story that, because they thought it was Midway Island, but they weren't sure. And they made up a story about having water problems. And sure enough, they intercepted another Japanese intercept just after that. It said AF is having water problems. Mm-hmm. So they knew it was Midway. So instead of them surprising the United States at Midway and drawing our carriers in, we knew they were coming. But still, if anybody ever wants to see the hand of God in protecting the United States, learn the story of Midway. In a 5-minute period, one of the U.S. carriers was pretty much destroyed to the part where it was going to sink. And we destroyed all 7, essentially.
Wow.
We sunk 6, and the last one was put out of service, and I believe it did sink on its way back to Japan. So in those 5 minutes, we eliminated Japan, who was our real danger to the Republic. Without that happening, if they had destroyed our 3 carriers, which it looked like they were going to do at first, again, there were some weird things that happened. There was nothing to stop them from invasion, and even going all the way to the west coast of the United States and invading there. In fact, the very same day they were invading southern Alaska, the Aleutian Islands. That was a diversionary thing, but we had no military to be able to defend up there as far as naval forces.
Oh yeah.
So that was another turning point in history. So if that had gone the other way, and we had not known, that little intercept, we probably would have lost the Republic then. And we probably would have been, at some point, we would have had to capitulate to the Japanese at some level.
So you're saying there's been a lot of close calls where it was almost lost, but almost something miraculous took place, and it didn't actually result in losing the Republic.
Exactly. And to me, the hand of God was in it each time. When you learn the history of it and just the total miracles that had to take place, like the Battle of Midway, they were switching from torpedoes to regular ammunition, and then when they were surprised that the aircraft carriers were spotted by the U.S., they said, "Okay, switch them back." But what they did was, because they were running out of time, they didn't have time to stow the ammunition. So even a peripheral hit by one of the bombers of the U.S. onto their carriers lit up these exposed bombs on their hangar deck and blew the whole ship up. So it was little things like that, little mistakes they made. But in 5 minutes, the war was won in the Pacific. Yes, it went on. That happened in what was that? That was June 7th, 1942, and most people don't know that date as anything significant. But yeah, it took 3 more years for Japan to surrender. But
so first of all, are you equating just the level of the situation we're in right now equivalent to like how serious of a situation we are as far as other times in history? Close calls?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's exactly what I'm getting to. This time is no. It's probably even more critical than a couple of those. Yeah. I think it's more critical than Antietam. Probably maybe as critical as Washington. And that's where we are right now. Okay. And we're to the point right now where we go down. I see 2 paths, and I've tried to think it through. You can't possibly, with what's going on right now, even just with what I've heard today, you can't imagine the twists and turns this is going to take. But I do know that going down one path, it's bright and shiny and wonderful at the end. And the other one is nothing but a deep, dark abyss.
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of people are feeling that, including myself. And it's not that I feel it. I'm more of a realist sometimes. And I look at the scenario that I think it's smart to always, no matter how sure you are, always play out the other scenario, just so you I guess don't have so much shock value, but also you can kind of prepare your mind for it, even though you can cling to one side. And again, for people that are listening in right now, I'm more on the other side. Rich is going to be taking the side, and he's going to be showing a lot of evidence supporting the fact that, guys, things are about to really radically change in the good ways, where I'm looking at like, I really don't see that happening. So it's going to be a really interesting show. You don't want to go anywhere, because it's not that we're going to debate, but we're going to learn from each other and play out those scenarios, because I think we're going to be in a lot of agreement based on those 2 roads that we'll take, what we need to do to prepare and also what's coming. And quite honestly, I really personally pray and hope I'm wrong. And so I'm really excited to kind of hear him lay out everything that's going to happen, because guys, we're days, weeks, maybe months away. Even before the show, Rich was saying this could play out even into April, he was saying. But I'm more curious to know, short term, what are we looking at here in, Wednesday is coming up, and also the 20th is coming up even, right afterwards. So maybe you just want to kind of break into that, the first road that you see happening based on the twists and turns that are going to happen here in a few days.
Okay. Well, let me first say that there's 3 things that really are going to govern what happens on Wednesday, the 6th. And the Congress convenes at 1 p.m. Eastern time on the 6th. And if you want to watch, if we're still around, and you're producing offspring, your great grandchildren, you'll be able to say, yes, I watched that live.
Yeah.
When this happened, it's going to be that dramatic.
Wow.
The difference with this one and all those other instances that I just went through
Mm-hmm.
is this time we know it's coming.
Correct. That is true.
Nobody in the country knew those other things were
That
coming.
is true. That is true. Yeah, that is a very good point.
So this is a way to, and this is going to be exploited. This is part of the plan that I believe the Trump administration has. Please let me preface this: if the shoe was on the other foot, this is not. Now I'll come out and say I support Trump way over Biden. I would never support Biden.
I would go on the record and say the same thing. Absolutely, 100%.
But if the shoe was on the other foot, and what I see has happened, and the Trump administration did it, and his party did it, I would be just as hard rooting for Biden to win.
You know what? That's a really good point, because I don't think a lot of people understand that. Guys, this is bigger than Trump and Biden. This is about the integrity of the entire republic and in the entire system. A lot of people had problems, in the truther community, even with elections to start with. But guys, we're seeing evidence that really the elections weren't completely rigged. We're seeing it play out based on these scenarios. But Rich is going to get into local governments and how it's kind of laid out. But what we're seeing right now is the fact that, guys, if they just had this rigged, they wouldn't go to all this work. They are really going to town on this. And I've said this many times, Rich, no matter what happens, and I personally think that, Trump's going to walk out. But I'm saying how people are going to know that Trump was the real deal, regardless, in my way of thinking, is if the scenario happens and he walks out and he doesn't win, even when his quote unquote job is done, they're coming after him and his family like fierce to teach him a lesson. And the question is, if he was just a pawn and a puppet, why would they viciously go after him and his family when his quote unquote job was done? Again, I'm just playing out that scenario. I want to hear your scenario, but I want people to know, because I know we're going to have audiences on both sides of the fence here. So they kind of know this is kind of a balanced discussion. It's not a debate, but I want you to lay it out, because I really do think there is that little sliver that, guys, there is a real possibility we're about to see some miracle take place that's going to blow our minds. It's going to make everything we've seen in 2020 pale in comparison to how crazy we're about to see take place. So I do hold that there. It's not that I don't know that it's there. It's there. So take the floor, go with it. I'll shut up.
Okay. Well, we've got three things that are really going to govern the proceedings on Wednesday, or that are supposed to, govern the proceedings. You start with the U.S. Constitution. It's Article 2, specifically, but not exclusively. Section 2 of Article 2 has to do with the electors and getting together and certifying the election. When you see these things pop up on YouTube and Twitter or whatever, saying that the electors have certified Joe Biden as the winner, then why are they getting together Wednesday to certify if he's already been certified? He has not been certified. So even what you just talked about, the propaganda, I've never seen it. I didn't even think it could go as high as it's gone, and people buy into it. But there has been no certification. Otherwise, there's no reason to meet on Wednesday for this. But so it's first and foremost the U.S. Constitution, Article 2. But then you have the 12th Amendment. The 12th Amendment came in later on, having to do with the presidential election and how the president and vice president are put into power. Before the 12th Amendment, it was Congress picked the one house picked the president, the other house picked the vice president, and they were often separate parties, and you can see how that didn't flush too well. So they came up with the 12th Amendment to fix all that. Then you have this weird thing called the Elector Count Act of 1887. And in my book, anything that has the word act after it isn't constitutional. That gets into the two constitutions that we have and different things like that. But an act, now I listed these things in order of precedence, how a court, if they weren't corrupt, which the Supreme Court obviously is, they won't even hear anything until 2 days after the inauguration. What kind of stuff is that? Mm-hmm. But anyway, you have the U.S. Constitution. That's the first primary. Then Article 2 of that Constitution. Then the 12th Amendment, and then the Electoral Count Act of 1887. The problem is each one of these has different parameters, and the Founding Fathers seem to be particularly vague with this process. And I think there's actually genius in that, because the founding fathers, they wanted the local legislature to be the strongest in the entire country. Your strongest, most powerful people, even though it doesn't seem like it, should be your local state legislatures. And I think after this, if it goes the way I think it's going to go, people are going to realize, hey, the most important people we pick are the people that are representing us that live 3 miles down the street from us. Because now when we want something done, we go to them. We don't cry to Washington. If you go back and read the Federalist Papers and things like that, the federal government should be the least powerful over the people, and that's been flipped on
It's
us.
been flipped. Yeah, it absolutely has. I mean, where people actually are like looking at the government like they're the ones to take care of us, and all. None of these responsibilities were in place with the government. The government has no money to take care of anyone. They're taking the people's money, right? So the whole idea has been flipped, where the newer generations have this idea of government, which the founding fathers had no intention that the government would be looked at like that ever.
Exactly. And they've gotten away from it. And we talked on the pre-show a little bit. The founding fathers really wanted your local legislatures to be the most powerful people, and they have forgotten that they are the most powerful people in the country. All of this coming down to the sixth shouldn't come down to the sixth. They should have already made up their minds at these local levels. But you have the 6 or 7 states involved. They have all allowed their governors from both parties, the governors, secretary of states, local judges, to change election rules in their states. And that's why we're in the mess we're in now. So they violated the Constitution. All the courts didn't want to touch it, all the way up into the Supreme Court. And I've said 2020 was going to be the year where we had perfect vision, and we've been given perfect vision. We see that everything is corrupt.
It is true. It is true. I mean, it wasn't even just the truthers. The whole world is seeing the corruption that was taking place. I mean, so it's gone a whole new level, because before it was just truther circles like, oh, the elections are rigged. Really, people didn't really understand what that means, because what if someone comes into the system that's not rigged? How does it play out? And we're seeing how it plays out. We're seeing the chaotic nature of what happens if someone's not playing ball with their system, that's not being paid off, that's not doing what they're told. In my personal opinion, right? That's just how I see it happening. That Trump was not a globalist. He was not falling on lines with, the UN. He was not at all playing favoritism whatsoever to any of their agendas, going against everything from climate change to, and they hate him. They hate him I mean, have you ever seen a president more hated anywhere at all? I mean, it's been intense hatred, almost demonic hatred for Trump.
Yeah, from all institutions, from his own party.
Yeah, his own party, for goodness sakes. Fox, for goodness sakes. I mean, this is unheard of. Bush, you never saw this, right? But I knew something was on early on when Fox was talking, even though they were positive, they weren't like when they talked about Bush. Bush could do no wrong. They still were being a little critical. Trump, when he first won, he didn't even have his own party's support. And people are like, it's all an illusion. He's all a puppet. I'm like, guys, something different's going on. There's nobody that can convince me that Trump, there's something different going on. I don't know the reasons why, but this whole idea that he's just part of the play, guys, you are going to be, regardless how this plays out, it doesn't matter. Over time, you're going to see how true he was and what an amazing president standing up for America and the people it's going to turn out to be. That's what I can say for sure. I will call that right now. Regardless, in the pages of history, he will be recognized as one of the greats.
Yeah, what did it for me was what opened my eyes that he was different was kind of funny. It was when he and Hillary Clinton were at that Alfred T. Newman, I think, dinner. It's a Catholic fundraiser thing, I believe. And they all, they dress in tuxedos.
I remember, with Hillary, where he starts dissing Hillary. Are you talking about that one? Oh my goodness, man! The stairs and what he did. Oh yeah, if anyone hasn't seen that clip,
was like there was no political correctness.
Nothing. Zero. Yes. That was like they were literally almost like they were literally seething. You could see the hate in their eyes. They were trying to laugh it off, like they're all kind of, he's telling jokes. But it got to a point where it's like, and he was just exposing. He wasn't even being nasty. He's just telling the truth. Hey,
Yes.
there's NBC, CBS, there's your donation. Like, he just was calling it out for what it was. It wasn't even being nasty. He was just telling the truth. But regardless, guys, I just want to go on the record. I'm saying all this about Trump, and I don't really care what anyone thinks of me standing for Trump. I don't even think Trump's going to win. So I want to say on the record, I'm saying all this about Trump, that he's going to be recognized as one of the greats, and he's freaking incredible. I personally don't think that he's actually going to be able to pull us off. Rich does. This is why this is going to be an intriguing discussion tonight. So we both are in favor of Trump. I don't think he's going to pull us off. Rich does. So continue on, Rich. I want you to really kind of explain how this is all going to play out, because we're days away and people are going to find out. Either way, we're going to talk about both scenarios tonight.
Yeah, right. Now, the thing that told me that Trump, well, let me say, first of all, that my faith in all of this, and I've said this on my streams, is that I just feel in my spirit that the Holy Spirit is communicating to me that there's absolutely 0% chance that Biden is going to be sworn in as president. And I've said that since
I know you have.
the night when the night that we were doing the election. I said they're stealing us right now before our eyes when they all stopped counting.
Yep.
And that was live. I said that.
Yep.
And for the next couple of days, just me trying to imagine Biden in there, something in my spirit said it isn't going to happen. And so and then I went on this search. And I'm not into prophets and things like that. There's a couple I like and a couple I trust. And they both said that Trump was absolutely going to be sworn in his second term. So I said, let me go and see if I can find others and see what they say. Mm-hmm. And I looked up about a dozen more. So maybe 15 total. And I've seen a couple more since then. And there is no wavering by any of them. And I don't know whether to trust them or not. But none of them are saying that he is stepping down. They all say he's going to have a second term. And I can't find anybody that has prophesied Biden's coming in. Not one.
Yeah, but that aside, Leo, regardless of the prophets, I've heard this, and I'm not dissing the prophets, but I'm just saying I don't take anything. I want the evidence, lay it out based on the case scenario, how you see this playing out, and why. Because I think a lot of people really aren't looking at kind of the details in this whole matter. And quite honestly, it's just fun to speculate at this point. We're days away from seeing how this is all going to play out. And you've got a couple scenarios even within your track. You've got like what happens on the 6th, what happens on the 20th, and even what happens if it goes further than the 20th on your scenario, right?
Right. Now, what indicated to me that the Trump administration knew they were staying was one on the 17th, which is that's what got me thinking about the prophets, because one of the prophets said that Biden symbolically would be dead on the 17th of December. And it was the 17th of December that they stopped giving him military briefings. That's unprecedented. That has never happened with a president-elect coming in, where they have cut off his military briefings. And they came out and said that both sides agreed to it, to take a break over the holidays because they were overwhelmed. The intelligence community doesn't get overwhelmed with intelligence. If you're going to give it to the president, you can give it to to Biden. Mm-hmm. It's no more work. You have an extra person or two in the room. That's it. So that didn't make sense. And then a couple of days later, the Biden administration came out and said, we didn't agree to anything. We don't know why they cut it off, and we're not in agreement with it. So that was the first thing that really said, okay, they've got something. And as of the 17th, they know they've got something. We have this raid that happened on election night that took a while to confirm, but evidently the CIA director, Gina Haspel, was in Frankfurt, Germany, and they were live going back and forth with the data on the election. Our election was going through Frankfurt, Germany in their servers, and they were allegedly shaving the votes. And my understanding from listening to Sidney Powell is they have the logs, and they were weighting the votes. So if you had 100 votes in there, they had an algorithm where 1.26% of those votes would go to Biden and 0.74 would go to Trump. Mm-hmm. What they would do is list for every 100 for each person. In other words, they would shave that. Now, of course, they wouldn't report fractional numbers, but that's what they were doing. They were doing fractional thing, and they were doing that over the entire country. And they thought that algorithm was going to be enough. Mm-hmm. But anyway, they've got that data. I'm convinced of it. That actually ties into the Nashville bombing, believe it or not.
Well, wasn't even the seats there was all of them. They were going Republic. Like usually the anomalies were really strange because they were losing seats. They were losing seats. They were winning certain states that really historically, anyone that's got Florida and stuff has never lost. Like there were certain things that were taking place until about 4 a.m. and that's where it all switched off. That's where it all changed.
Right. Well, people were watching live, even on like CNN.
Yep.
They flash up at the bottom, the vote totals, let's say in Michigan.
Yep.
And they were seeing it live where 35,000 votes would subtract from Trump and 35,000 votes would add to.
There's 75 million Americans right now that believe they were disenfranchised. They believe that the election was stolen. So here's the reality of this. You got 75 million Americans now knowing that the election was stolen. We understand there's always fraud in the elections. The question is there enough fraud that you can prove that will overturn the results? Because let's say you find that there's 30,000 votes that were stolen. Well, 30,000 votes still doesn't account to win. You know what I mean? So you still got to prove based on the numbers. We know this happens in every election stuff, not to this level. And that's the whole thing. Can it be proved? And so far to this date, it has not been proved. The Supreme Court has ignored it. And all these things have taken place where it's been presented. And it's we're at a point in America, in my opinion, where they won't even review the evidence and go guilty or innocent. They're like, we're not even going to look at it. Like, to me, I was horrified at the level of where the law system is, where they won't even look into the case. To me, I'm taking this point of view going, what did you think about that when all of a sudden they were refusing to even look at the evidence?
Yes, so that's another, 2020 eye-opening experience where you find out that the entire system
is corrupt,
is totally corrupt,
yeah,
and bought off, or the people are threatened.
Sure,
and I'm sure that's part of it as well.
I agree with that. Yes, 100%. We are literally 2020. Everything is coming to light, and it's not just a bunch of fringe truthers or something. It's literally like half of America are now 110 convinced. And that's why I personally think, Rich, to tell you the truth, in my scenario, that Trump walks out, he's going to become even more powerful outside of the White House, because the amount of transformation, if he does a media empire, competes with Fox, he's got now almost 80 million Americans. He can rewrite the entire. I don't see personally the Republican Party as we know it, even probably in your scenario in the same way. It will not exist the way we've known it. It is all being restructured regardless of the outcome. Would you agree with that? Like the old guard is going away?
Both parties are gone.
Yeah, I agree with that. So it's weird how I'm looking at the fact that I don't think Trump's going to, he's won obviously, but I think they're going to steal away from him. I still think there's a longer story here where you think, nope, it's going to surprise everyone. He's going to be staying in. But both scenarios, we both agree on what is going to be transformed in America based on what Trump is doing, whether he's in the White House or not, which I find fascinating. Don't you find fascinating that we're coming to the same conclusions of how radical this is going to be, even in both those scenarios?
Yes, that's why this is the critical moment in the republic, because it falls. And what it is let me give you the bottom line first on why we'll go into the abyss, and it's a short answer.
We need to talk about that, because quite honestly, I'm looking at that scenario quite heavily, and I'm going, guys, personally, Rich, this is my view. If hypothetically, I agree, God has literally favored America. I don't care what anyone said. There's been blessings and there's been a covering over America to a time. At what point, though, does God say, sorry, I'm done. I'm removing my blessings, and now I'm going to throw you through judgment for maybe 40, 50, 100 years, and you're going to learn some lessons and maybe repent and come back to your ways. If that is the case and scenario, if God is putting judgment on America and we go into a dark phase, even though people say that's really bad, guys, I mean, the Jews were slaves for 40 years. They were under Egyptian rule. And again, he still prospered in that time. We have to look bigger picture in the kingdom level of things. Even if we go into a level of real darkness, he's still operating. He's still got a provisional plan for the believers that they're going to operate in his sovereignty and providence. And that's what I find really incredible with this is regardless, he's fully in control of this. But my point is, at what point, Rich, though, of the depravity and the sickness and honestly the backslidden of believers of the quote-unquote Christian nation, at what point does God say, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to now throw you under slavery, I'm going to throw you under iron rule, and you're going to actually, this is going to be good for you, but you're going to live in this for a while? Because the one thing that America or North America has never ever had experienced is massive persecution. We don't even understand persecution like China and believers around the world. What if we have to go through a time like that? Everyone kind of thinks we're going to be in this bubble forever. And I'm just throwing the scenario out there that if we look the other direction, I'm going to tell everyone, if it doesn't happen the way they think it's going to happen, the prophets on it, I will say, okay, fine. Will you at least admit now that their hope is completely gone. Literally, they've got the Senate. They're running through with all their plans to transform America. They're turning it communist. At this point, can we all agree that literally judgment has fallen on America and that favor has been taken away? Would you at least agree with that, Rich? If that scenario takes place, would you agree with me that then judgment has come, not blessings anymore to America? Is that safe to say?
Yes.
Okay.
However, let me throw you a curveball on that one.
Sure.
I think we've been oppressed by the central banks. We've been in slavery by them, by the elites of the world, for quite a while now. And
Okay.
I think that is our judgment. The judgment now time has ended.
Oh, okay.
And now
Interesting. All right.
and now those who have oppressed us, it's time for their judgment.
Interesting. Cool. Well, either way, like I said, it's interesting to play out those scenarios for sure. I think we all are in agreement, though, when it comes to the significance. And I'm not saying it's all about Trump. Trump's amazing. I just think there's some sort of favor or something around him, and it's exposing a lot of things, not just in America. The whole world hates him. I mean, anyone that was New World Order, globalist, from Soros to Kissinger to you name it, Bill Gates, they all hate him. And it's not this play. Oh, we're going to deceive the truthers. We're going to pretend that, this whole thing has got so tired and I just got more outspoken on this. I'm like, guys, this is ridiculous. You've so gone off the red pill cliff when you're at a point now where you're staring in the face of someone that's actually calling them fake news, speaking their mind, and you're like, oh, it's a puppet. It's a puppet. You wouldn't know a miracle, a blessing, and someone good and powerful coming in and actually doing something if you actually think the world is so rigged that no one could ever change it up, like Rich is doing tonight. He's going to throw some curveballs. If you don't believe that God can throw curveballs into their plan, you've lost all hope based on God's plan for the world. They have their plans, and guess what God does with their plans? He laughs, and he also sometimes goes, you know what? I'm going to delay that for 30 years. They think they're going to accomplish that in 10 years. I'm going to show them that they're going to get all kerfuffled, just kind of like the Tower of Babel, and I'm going to confuse them, and they're all going to separate for a while. My point is this: regardless what takes place, no matter how dark it gets, guys, remember, they might have their plans to unite the whole world and give everyone a vaccine, but the fact is, if God doesn't want it to happen that way, it will never happen. Ever happen. Is that my point?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let me give you the most likely thing I think is going to happen Wednesday. I think it's all a show to show the American people this is the way the Trump administration gets around the censorship. Everybody from both sides is going to be watching what happens Wednesday. And in fact, just today, this was confirmed when I heard that Ted Cruz and 8 other senators want to call for a 10-day emergency audit of the election. I don't think they're going to need that because I think the Trump administration has that all ready to go. I think there's going to be bombshells of information that we haven't even heard of yet. Maybe even people hot mic'd on video that they don't think are on video. And I'm talking politicians and ties to, they're going to at least tie it to China, if not these other nations that are involved. What's funny is this $600 stimulus check thing that they just did. All the countries that were getting these billions for these weird little
ridiculous
things. They were all the countries that are involved allegedly in what happened with the election. So
gender education to like what country was it where there were actually it was $1 million or something for gender education? I mean,
it was a lot. Yeah, exactly.
It was ridiculous. Like Syria or Pakistan or it was like, are you kidding me? You're actually
Pakistan,
It was
Pakistan's
so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I'm like, are you flipping kidding me? Like everyone is suffering and you're going to put a bill together and start sending millions of dollars to these countries to give them gender education? Like, have you lost your mind? Like it is so completely, I'll agree with this. World is so backward. It is so loopy right now where people are questioning if they're even male or female. I'll tell you, all throughout history, the one thing, it was wicked, it was perverted, but the one thing all throughout history they never, ever questioned was male and female. We've gone a level that's never happened in history. You know what it says in Ecclesiastes, that nothing new happens under the sun? One thing is new, because there's no record in history where people got so insane where they started questioning one day like, maybe I'm not a man. Maybe I'm a woman. You know what I mean? That's a whole new level of craziness. I'm just saying it personally. That's my personal opinion on it. But I think it's a crazy level when you're at that point and people are actually nodding their head. They're like, yeah, that makes sense. Like if Rich feels like a woman, then yeah, he's a woman. It's like, what are you talking about? What happened to the chromosomes? What happened to the real science, right? So I say this a lot in the shows, but I'm like, guys, we're still in an environment where the scientists are becoming the authorities. And guys, we moved to a whole new level. They're not just trying to be the authorities. They're trying to be the overlords. They're trying to be the domineering forces and telling us to stay home. They literally have amplified themselves beyond scientism when it was about NASA they've gone to a whole new level.
Yeah. Well, just look at Fauci. Fauci's got the whole world inside their house with masks on.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so sorry, continue. I'm just pumped up. People are saying I'm like interrupting you, and I probably am. So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to mute my mic. Just you talk. I'm just really pumped because there's so much going on. It's so hard not to be passionate about everything I'm seeing. It's like, it's like venting tonight, but you're the guest. So honestly, I want you just to kind of explain it, and you tell me if you have a question, and I'll just let you go. So go through the whole scenario. You're the guest. I want to hear your scenarios because I could go off for, hours based on what I think is going to take place.
Okay. Well, believe it or not, it's only probably a paragraph left of
okay. Well,
mind.
Okay. I'll be mindful of that because I am going off. I will admit.
Okay. Well, then we can spread off of that. But I believe this is all the evidence is there, mind-blowing evidence, no doubt about it. Evidence, much more than even showing Miss Goldilocks in Georgia, sending the ballots through 5 times in the machine, that type of thing. Much more than that. And what they're going to do is they're going to present this evidence so that it's so compelling and so obvious that if any member then votes to certify electors, knowing that it is pointed out with all this evidence, we know of 52,000 affidavits from people saying that there were, I have to watch the words because I know part of this is on YouTube, voter irregularities. 52,000, that's evidence. And of course, the courts won't hear it. If you go on Twitter, the brain dead are like, all the courts have said there is no evidence. No, the courts don't want to hear it because of whatever reason. They're bought off. They've been threatened. It's corrupt. But if anybody then votes to certify Biden's electors, after this evidence, not only can they and will they be arrested for sedition or treason, but the American people, the vast amount of American people will be behind it. There'll be no hiding from it. And I think that's all part of the plan where Trump, I've been mulling it over. Why does Trump want people there on January 6th when this could go the other way? That was at first when I first heard this. Mm-hmm. And him saying, it's going to be wild. And, that most people are saying it's so that it can put pressure on, like a Nancy Pelosi or whatever to do there's no pressure going to cause them to do the right thing. They're beyond that. Their conscience is seared with a hot iron, and it isn't popping out again to normal. Those people are gone. But now, along with that, what I heard just before we went on was that Trump has renewed one of the, and I can't remember the number, I apologize. It begins with an S. It's an executive order S1 or S38. I can't remember, but he just renewed it or activated it. And it is to, are you ready for this? Fund FEMA camps. And I know a lot of people are going to get all freaky just by saying that. To be able to hold up to 200,000 prisoners. In the U.S. And I think this is all going to be part of the clean out. Well, the thing that has become obvious with all this, and going back just to mention it before I forget it, I think this whole thing has caused more Christians to pray than they have in a long time over this situation here, because a lot of people realize this is the republic hanging by a thread.
Well, yeah, the whole thing hinges on it. I would agree that people understand the severity of the situation we are in history. I mean, at this pinnacle point, it's pretty dire and it's pretty severe. What could take place?
And look what's happened. The same people in the church realize that they've been told they can go out to Walmart and Costco, but they can't go to church.
Yeah, of course, it's ridiculous. Don't even get me started on that. That was my last show, and I went off about what churches and pastors. I did the whole show on it. Trust me, people will know. So I don't trust me. You get me on any of these topics, I'm very passionate on it. But yeah, I totally agree with you 100%.
Yeah, but that is the I think the plan as far as I see it. Now there's like, I can come up with 15, 20 different scenarios that can split off of that, but I'm convinced evidence is going to be extremely damning on Wednesday, and it's going to be jaw dropping. And it'll be so obvious. And I know this is going to sound weird, but there's going to be a lot of former special services people there in this crowd. A lot of people that are in militias. A lot of people, extreme patriots.
No, a
and
lot of
things
patriots.
Like that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think if there's any kind of plan for these people to try to escape, they're going to have to go through whoever. I think it's going to be more than 1 million people. I think it's going to be up to 4 or 5 million people show up. I know that sounds like glass in the sky or whatever, but I sort of saw a picture in my mind, as weird as that sounds, of
So just so I'm clear and the audience is clear, you hold to the fact that this is kind of like a roundup, kind of the Q narrative. I'm not going to say it's like 100%, but you pretty much are following kind of the Q ideology based on the fact that this is kind of completely draining the swamp, rounding up everyone. Would you say that's safe to say that you're still pretty much following along the lines of kind of what Q has been kind of saying throughout the years?
What's funny is it doesn't matter with Q.
Okay.
Because it's the way I see it is this is the beginning of what Q calls the Great Awakening.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's started yet. It's dribbled out. The avalanche comes Wednesday. That's when it starts.
So and you said there's other scenarios. So when you said like this thing could go to the 20th or could even go into April, what were you meaning by that? So like if something like how does it get prolonged? If all of a sudden it goes down in a couple of days here on Wednesday, then why is there any other scenarios? It's done. It's completed. If all of a sudden this gets exposed, then other than riots and people going ballistically crazy like we've never seen in America, other than that scenario, how are there other roads on this?
That goes back to what I was. This is why I brought this up earlier. You have the Constitution, Article 2, the 12th Amendment, in the Electoral Count Act of 1887. They all can get you into some weird scenarios where time goes by.
Okay.
Depending on how that's interpreted. The most nightmarish scenario of all of it is that Obama could actually come back for 2 years. Believe it or not.
How really quickly, how in the world does that happen?
I can't tell you all the steps because I haven't studied it.
Okay.
I've heard it a couple of times, but I can tell you pretty much how it goes. The election is disputed, and there is nobody who gets to 270, and they can't solve it in time for the election.
Okay.
In that case, I believe it's under that act of 1887, where the Speaker of the House actually becomes the president until it's solved. That would be Nancy Pelosi.
That's Nancy Pelosi. Yeah.
Right.
I agree with
that. However, I don't think that's what they want. There is and I've heard this before, and this is not connected to this election in particular, but I've heard where the Democrats have looked for some sort of way for Nancy Pelosi to become president to do this before. But there's in that provision of that act, it said, or an appointee, or it's the Speaker of the House is the one that could do it. But the Speaker of the House can appoint the person, and the person doesn't have to be a member of the House. Of all crazy things, she could go find a wino on the street and pull him in and say, this is the new Speaker of the House. So under that act, then you combine that with the 12th Amendment, which is, they put that in under Roosevelt, after Roosevelt, I guess during the Truman administration or shortly thereafter, to keep, because he was elected 4 times. And they said, no, that's too long for a president. He's limited to 2 terms. But there's a little provision in there that says, or 10 years. And the reason why the or is because this could have happened in our lifetime. When Kennedy was killed, there was less than 2 years left on Kennedy's term when Johnson got in there. Johnson then ran in 1964 and won. And under that amendment, he could have run again in 1968. So he could have had 2 terms and almost 2 years, almost 10 years. He would have been a little shy of 10 years because of when Kennedy was shot. But that provision allows that if a president comes into office, you know who this would have worked out with perfectly? Would have been Spiro Agnew under Nixon. Resigned because he got caught in corruption. And then Gerald Ford was appointed president. Oh, that's another weird thing that could happen too with Pence. So remind me of that if I don't get back to it.
All right.
But Pence could actually be gone, and Trump, I believe, can just appoint anybody he wants to be vice president, and he can pick the electors. I don't think there's any confirmation or anything that I can remember in the Constitution that's required for that or any of these amendments. That's just an appointment. And that's what in our lifetime has happened. Spiro Agnew was out. Nixon came out one day and said, I picked Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford was vice president. It's the way it worked. But anyway, Ford could have, let's just say he beat Carter then. He could have been in there for that term and then another term. So he could have actually served 10 years. I think it would have worked out right for him, or just slightly less than 10 years. So Obama served 8. He's got two years. He could actually serve in a weird. He can't run for office again, but he's got, in a weird scenario like that, he could come in and serve for 2 more years. You talk about going down dark rabbit holes, but it's actually possible because you have all these. You throw these stupid electric, like I said, these acts. They're unconstitutional. Once this, and I'm going to start talking from the standpoint now that Trump is going to be in there on the 20th or whatever this is solved, just because that it's going to make it easier for me to say what I believe is going to happen.
Sure.
I think we're going to go back to the initial Constitution, and these acts are going to go away because you can't have these acts like the Patriot Act. You can't have the Patriot Act under the Constitution.
Correct.
To do something like that, you have to have a constitutional amendment. Because the Constitution didn't give. Here's the way the Constitution put it: if the power isn't expressly given to the government, it's not theirs. They can't just take it. I'm paraphrasing. They can come up with an amendment, and I've talked about this on my stream. Isn't it funny how when they wanted to ban alcohol, people knew that? See, they were educated on civics and the Constitution back then. They had to have a constitutional amendment to ban alcohol, and they did. And then they had to have I think it was the 18th Amendment, and then the 19th Amendment, I might have the numbers wrong, was the repeal of prohibition. But then when it came to marijuana, they didn't need a constitutional amendment. They actually did, but because people don't know their civics, they got away with it. So there's a lot of things that are really illegal that or illegal power has been taken by the federal government. The federal government has been slowly but surely stealing power from the people and from the states and from the legislatures. And the last big grab was 2001, the Patriot Act. And of course, they've done it since, and most people don't even think about it. But it's not pro or against gay marriage or anything like that. But the government can't dictate to a business that you have to make a cake or not make a cake for a gay couple. That's up to the business. And like I said, it has nothing to do with the subject matter. It's just a matter of knowing what the founders said was possible and not possible for the federal government to do.
It's almost like the government, do they have the right to be like shutting down businesses and going in and doing what they're doing, right? It all comes down to the overreach that's taking place in the control. Guess
where that comes from? That comes from the Patriot Act.
Yeah.
That gives the governors the supposed right to be dictators during national emergencies.
Which goes against the Constitution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So all of this is unconstitutional. But isn't it funny nobody bubbles it up to the Supreme Court to challenge it?
Yeah, it is.
But anyway, so I think the evidence is well. That's one thing that they're shown so much that they know they're going to be locked up if they go along with this because they're knowingly certifying a fraudulent election, which is a federal crime. That's why these legislatures, they got to be careful. That's why even after these governors said, like our tyrannical governor, he's a Republican here in Arizona, rushed to certify the electors as they were the morning they're giving testimony showing how they stole the election in Pakistan. Now I said that because of YouTube. But anyway, yeah, the morning they're hearing evidence and affidavits from people and people testifying what they did here in Arizona, he didn't even wait for the hearing to be over. He certified the electors.
It was one of the first, wasn't it? Wasn't Arizona called like real fast? Or was that the?
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
Well, yes. Well, they did something different in Arizona than the other states. The other states, they stopped counting late, and then in the middle of the night, they dumped all the Biden votes. In Arizona, they dumped all the Biden votes early.
That's right.
That's why Fox News was so confident, because it was already in. And they looked and said, oh, there isn't quite enough for for Trump to make it up. There actually was. When you listen to the people, they were doing the same thing here with the mail-in votes and things like that. So I think that's the most likely scenario. Then you have the Pence options. Pence can now, believe it or not, it won't get exciting. It's going to be boring at first Wednesday, but when they start the roll call, I don't expect anything to happen. They do it alphabetically. I don't expect anything to happen with Alabama and Alaska, but the third state called is Arizona. When Arizona's called, you're going to have at least Josh Hawley from Missouri, senator, and it appears right now there's 140 House of Representatives that will also object. Now, when they object to a state, they are supposed to stop and go 2 hours into deliberation.
Hold that thought. We're going to go to break here. Just real quick, Rich. You're listening to Celebrate Truth Radio. My guest is Richard Hopkins. This is episode 92. Don't go anywhere. We got a lot more coming after these messages.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Hello, Karl Marx here. Look at my wonderful hair. Notice how I sweep it back.
Carl?
I call it the 360 sweep. Beard, sideburns, and the magnificent coif.
Carl!
What? What is this?
You're on the radio. They can't see you.
Oh, yeah. I get confused. Want to learn more about the Marxist agenda and other important stuff? Listen to The Ultimate Remedy with L.B. Bork, Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, right here on Revolution Radio.
This is Barbara DeLong, host of Nightlight Radio, inviting you to join me on a cosmic journey, exploring a metaphysical montage of spiritual material, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between, including spiritual readings for those who seek enlightenment. Let Nightlight provide you with equal measure of light, love and laughter, insight, wisdom, and inspiration. Monday nights, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern, right here on Studio B, Revolution Radio, at freedomslips.com.
All right. Thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Everyone to celebrate Truth Radio. This is hour
Hour two, and my special guest.
And I got an echo.
It
should go away.
Anyways,
hour two
with
Richard Hopkins. Before the break, we were getting into something. Everyone hearing an echo? I got an echo. Oh, well. I think I'm going to have an echo. Hopefully it goes away. Maybe you talk, Rich, see if there's an echo.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely hear an echo on your side.
Yeah, you actually, it's gone away now. I think you just needed to talk. It does that sometimes after the break. I don't know why it does, but it does. But anyway, sorry, guys. Yeah, we're into hour two. Rich, continue on what you were going through just before we went to break, talking about just different scenarios and what you see playing out based on. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's two things kind of taking place, right? You've got kind of that whole electoral kind of decision-making process, but you got the Senate in Georgia, right? We haven't really even touched about Georgia because they're using the same machines, are they not? For the voting that's taking place in Georgia for the Senate?
Yes. Not only are they doing that, but if I don't know if you caught it, was it yesterday or the day before? They were having hearings in the Senate, and the guy, what's his name, Pulitzer, walked in and said, "We're in there live right now, connected to the internet to these machines." And of course, Dominion, they had already gone to Congress and testified and said, "No, you can't connect to the internet using our machines." And they were in. And when he was questioned, he said, "Not only are we in, but we can see the data going back and forth, sharing, and we could do anything we want if we wanted to." And these are machines right now counting the votes for the runoff election, because it's not just the same day election. They've been able to vote ever since they knew who the runoff was, or since early December they've been able to vote. So those machines right then were connected to the internet. And but yeah, it's a total nightmare. What should happen is these legislatures should say, we are decertifying the electors we sent. We're now sending these.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get into the question, which the Supreme Court won't answer. Well, that's past the date. But there's been other precedents in history where the date didn't really matter.
Correct.
That's why the big date really is the 20th. It's more important than even this Wednesday. But this Wednesday is, I mean, for all intents and purposes, that this should either solve it on Wednesday or kick in what's going to solve it.
So then do you see like a siege taking place on the White House at that level? Do you think there'll be coordinated attacks for the 20th if that takes place? What do you see the outcome based on if it goes that direction on the 6th, leading up to the 20th? What should we expect going towards the 20th based on what the left's response is going to be, specifically, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and all that?
Yeah, I think what will happen there is the well, there's so many moving pieces. You have the DNI, Ratcliffe, the National Intelligence Director. He has to report to Trump, which he already has. They're playing a game. I don't know, to drag it out, whatever. But he said after the holidays, he'll give Trump the report to see if there was any foreign interference in the election. And of course, the left spun it and said that's because he needs more time because he couldn't find any. I think he needed more time because that was part of the plan to drag it out until it got real close to this, so that attention could be put on it. But I think that's probably already been invoked. And what that allows Trump to do is that allows him to invoke parts of the Insurrection Act, and it also allows him to freeze all the assets of anyone that was involved in the election and how it came down. And so that's Chinese assets, Pakistani assets, Israel assets, Germany, Spain. There was a lot of countries involved. All you have to do is look at that act that they passed with the $600 stimulus, and you'll get most of the countries that were involved.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That's why they're getting, $1 million or 10 million or whatever it was for gender studies. Because nothing, you don't need a dime to study gender studies. That's a payoff and a payback, because what happens is these politicians, they get a kickback of the kickback. This is why you have Nancy Pelosi, and I'm not just picking on Democrats. It's Republicans too that make $250,000 a year, and they have five mansions worth $110 million. How's that done?
Mm-hmm.
But I was talking before the break was the Pence scenarios. Well, like I said, when it gets to Arizona, it will be objected. Now, a couple things can happen right there. Pence can immediately invoke that. That is under, I think that's the one under Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, where they immediately go and adjourn for 2 hours and argue the point, which I don't think is what they're going to be doing. I think that's when the evidence is presented. Or at that time, Pence could say, we're going to have because he is the president of the Senate, and he's presiding then. He's the presiding officer. Mm-hmm. He can say, well, at this point, what we're going to do is show evidence. And that's what I expect to happen. However, he can say, well, let's just say they go into deliberation for 2 hours and come back. That will lead nowhere, because you got a split House and a split Senate. And there isn't enough in either one to make a choice. So that ain't going to do anything. But other than give them time maybe to show evidence. Pence can then say, I accept in Arizona they certified for Biden. And then later they sent an unofficial, we have 11 electors here, 11 for Trump. He can actually look at the envelope and say, I'm picking the Trump 11, or I'm picking the Biden 11, or he can say, I'm picking neither one. The election, I believe what he's got to say, the election is contested in Arizona. I'm not accepting any electors from the state. So he throws it out. Then it comes down to the next state, which would be probably Georgia. Georgia, I think, it'll go through the other states that are not involved. Then it'll get to Georgia. Same thing will happen. Now, that could be a long process. There's even a nightmare scenario where, and this is just for us,
you do realize in this takes place, and it just all of a sudden goes into this mode. I mean, the left are going to go crazy during this time. I mean, everything's going to be ramped up in major cities across America at this point, right? You would agree with that?
Yeah. I didn't totally answer your question. I think the riots you saw in June in those cities.
Yeah.
June and July, and every time somebody was shot, the same cities had riots.
Correct.
And those are the cities to watch. And I think in fact, I'm almost 100% positive. I mean, I'm not there, but from all the different intelligence I can gather from a lot of different people, the military assets are already in place in these places to move in. They're already in staging areas. And they're on high alert, and they're waiting for this. I've talked about this on my stream too. They're all at their staging area. One of them was in Nevada, just south of Vegas. And tens and tens of thousands. So
even if the governor
troops,
and the mayor and everyone are saying, do not come into our state, you're saying that basically they're just going to override the will of those states.
Yes, they will be able to, because the Insurrection Act will be invoked.
So you think that will be
the president has.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it doesn't have to they kept the media kept trying to bait Trump during this COVID stuff.
I remember. Yeah. But he wouldn't take their bait. What if
they don't do it?
He wouldn't take their bait.
Yeah. What if they don't do it? What are you going to do? And even if he suggested he would do something, then the first thing out of their mouth was, I remember this one idiot reporter said, where in the Constitution do you have that power? When the whole time they're trying to lead him the other way. So, there was more debate. And Trump said, you'll see. And all it was just Trump bluffing, because he never went in to anywhere. He kept saying, they have to ask us. Just like Milwaukee asked, or one of those cities. Or was it Minneapolis? I can't remember which. There was somewhere in the Northwest or the Midwest there. that was having problems. Minneapolis, I think is what it was. The governor finally, or the mayor said, please, called up Trump and said, you have permission to send in the National Guard. They did, and they cleaned it up in an hour or two. And Trump used that example over and over. He goes, we can fix it. This tight, know how Trump is. We can fix it in 20 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
And then some of us around, we can fix it in 8 or 9 minutes. He
kept just like, lower. Give me a call. Just give me a call. Just say you want us to come in, and we'll get it cleaned up for you. Yeah, I remember.
But see, all the way, Trump has that, and that's another thing that makes me think he's on the good side. He has not violated the Constitution.
I will agree with that. I will agree with that. There was many times that, honestly, people were surprised that he didn't. He could have actually, done it and actually legitimized it pretty well based on all the events that were taking place, and he didn't. He relied on the states. He followed the Constitution to a T. To a T is what I saw, unless someone, unless you see it different. But quite honestly, that's one of the biggest arguments. Like, guys, say what you want about Trump. He honored the Constitution every which way, especially when he could have gone buck wild with power. He really could have gone overboard with power and gone King Trump and gone crazy, which a lot of people, I remember, they're like, guess what? Trump's about to do martial law and blah, blah, blah. And he did nothing. He did nothing of the sort. Riding over people's constitutional rights, over their freedoms. He did everything by the book. And honestly, I think it was just incredibly, it surprised people that were even pro-Trump. They were surprised at how disciplined he was not to step on the Constitution.
Right. And I think that goes all the way back to the debate with Hillary Clinton, where everybody laughed and he said, I have a better temperament than she does. And everybody laughed. Yeah. Because, that we're making the big thing about him. And, we had this recent thing where you had several people meeting at the White House, and Pat Cipollone, his personal attorney, whatever, was supposedly up in his face, Trump's face, yelling and screaming at him. And this other guy who, I can't remember his name, but he's the head of Overstock. He's the Overstock CEO. He was at the meeting, and he said he was never, he's a libertarian.
Yeah, I know. I followed Patrick a long time because he's been in crypto and he did Overstock. He was one of the first big kind of Amazons that was accepting crypto, Bitcoin, way back. So he's been part of. I've known about Patrick for a long time. I think it's Patrick Byrne or something. Is it
right?
Byrne?
Well, he's a libertarian.
Yes, he is.
Yes,
he is.
Yes, he's a libertarian. He said, "I'm going to tell you right now, I did not vote for Trump. I have never voted for a Republican, and I've never voted for a Democrat. So he's definitely, and I consider myself a libertarian too. Mm-hmm. But he said, I was really taken by Trump because he was so reserved and such a gentleman, and exactly the opposite than the way everybody portrays him. Mm-hmm. He said he felt like getting into Pat Cipollone's face. He said I was about ready to nudge him in the face or the side or something and say, hey, get out of his face. He's the president of the United States. But my understanding is that Trump has a face in public, and when other people are there, like that Overstock guy, who isn't normally part of the inner circle. And then when they get behind, the war room walls, it's a little different story. Trump makes the calls. But I've always thought that no matter what Trump is, and I wish people would get this to their head, because they've been given a false thing that it's Trump this, Trump that. I don't think Trump is really anything on his own. I think patriots went to Trump. I do believe this story, and this is pre-Q when I heard about this. Mm-hmm. And the Patriots went to Trump and said that they were actually going to overthrow Obama. Well, actually, this started back in 1990. It was the last part of the Clinton administration, and then Bush came in and did what he did. And they didn't want either one, the Patriots, the military. They saw that we were being sold out. And the initial idea was to have a coup, a military coup, and then to restore the republic. And they said the whiter of the white hats took control and said, no, that's not the way to do it. We can do this constitutionally. And they got some of the most brilliant people in the world together and said, this come across, let's do this plan. And my understanding is the plan is as big as for those of us of my age or whatever, the old yellow pages or whatever in large metropolitan cities that were like 3 or 4 inches thick, or you think of these old Geneva Bibles.
Yeah, I remember. Oh, yeah.
That they said the plan was that thick and that intricate, and they had Donald Trump in mind and had been recruiting him since long before he became president and came down the escalator. And the basic thing was, you'll be president, but you have to follow the Constitution. And constitutionally, this we want to do this constitutionally, because if it's not done, we're going to do it anyway. And that's my thing with this, where Q, not tie it into Q, whether you believe Q or not, it makes this part makes sense, where it says nothing is going to stop this, nothing. So let's just say Biden is put in there, or is both. The problem I have with this, every time I think of this, there's nightmare scenarios on both sides.
There really is.
Because if Biden is selected, and I've already heard this, and I believe it 100%, that by about the 8th or 9th, all the militia groups are going to organize on the right. And they are not, because they see that China is in the special interest and the big banks, they're just taking over the country. And they're just not going to allow it.
Do you honestly think it's at that point? Like, I agree. There's a certain point where all of a sudden, it moves to civil war. The Patriots step in. But the question is, for the most part, where have they been? I mean, and I'm not just talking about the average patriot, but a lot of people have been scratching their heads based on all this stuff that's happening in 2020. And you're kind of like, where are they? What's it going to take for them to actually say enough's enough? I honestly, personally don't think where we're at right now is even enough to go to that level. I think, the first stage is really starting to voice in a very public way and say, look, by the states, I mean, Texas is already talking about, not about seceding, but literally saying, look, guys, we're getting into discussions now. And we're not threatening anything, but we need to have some serious talks, right? So they're kind of talking about the nonviolent route first, sort of thing, but almost kind of sending a message. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I personally don't think that it's at the point right now where all of a sudden everyone that's on those 75 million, I mean, they're just going to run out of their homes and they're going to get their arms and they're going to say, nope, that's it, we're going to war. I just have a hard time believing it. I think there's a complacency with a lot of people in America right now where they're just kind of sitting back and they're like, well, yeah, it sucks, but what can we do? And I really don't see the urgency. I really haven't seen it. I've seen more of it on the left side with their militias than I have seen the Patriots. The Patriots have been very small in number and in presence so far. And again, that could change, but maybe you can make an argument for it. I have serious doubts that the average patriot is going to go out and say, this is it. This is the time. We need to do it now. Why couldn't they wait to 2 years into Biden's administration and say, okay, enough's enough. They're now trying to turn it communist. They went a little way too far. Now we're going to step in. Because it's one thing, if they don't have the Senate, there's certain things that the Biden administration won't be able just to ram through. They're not going to be able to do these huge sweeping changes if they don't have the Senate. Would you agree with that? That there's certain things they're going to get roadblocked on? There'll be some checks and balances?
No.
So you think that if all of a sudden they get the White House, but again, they lose the Senate, you don't think the Senate is going to make it difficult? It's kind of like every time this has happened throughout history, they always get blocked on big stuff. On small stuff, I agree. It's not going to matter. But massive things, you don't think there's going to be a bit of roadblocks?
No.
Okay.
And I think that's where we are, because they've all bought into this, up to Mitch McConnell. They bought into this, and I could be wrong with him, but I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, his wife's sister is married to President Xi of China.
No, say no more. Yeah, well, exactly. And I know the whole China initiative is like, let's be like China. Look at China. They're amazing. Look what they did with coronavirus. Look what they're doing with one child policy. Like, it's like the whole world now wants to emulate China, thinking they're the best. And again, China is communist, right? So it's almost like, guys, they're communist. They're awesome. Let's be communist too. They're not hiding it anymore. That's the crazy thing. We advanced from, in the shadows to, guys, we're Marxists, we're communists, and we want to destroy America. We want to rewrite the Constitution. We want to take down the statute, rewrite history, teach all the children that America's evil and white people are racist, and everyone's kind of nodding their head on the other side. They're like, yeah, sounds good. Like, to me, that's the most insane thing. It has to be a spiritual thing that's taking place for people to transition that quick and go, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, I think America's evil, and we should be taught different, and we should change all our history. To me, I'm more shocked at the level of complacency with people wanting to go that far. It's not even Republican Democrat anymore. Would you agree?
No.
It's literally communist.
Yeah, I think you've had a certain percentage of the wake up that was needed happen in 2020. Let's call it the base, the foundation. And the way, and I talked about this on my stream too, I believe it was the last one or the one before, where here's the way I see the information coming out. We have what I would term non-personal corruption be released massively at first. And this is the lowest of the level of invoking emotion. This is where they show the what happened with the election and irregularities and who was involved and things like that. And they'll go as deep with that as they need to. If then that isn't enough, then they start saying, okay, look what else these leaders have been doing. And they get into how they have gotten kickbacks and frauding the American public. And each one of these steps raises the emotion a little bit, down to the point, and it'll have to be a compressed time because it'll have to be done by the 20th. By the 20th, the American people are going to see these elite leaders draining adrenochrome from kids after they've been tortured on live video. Now, you're going from non-personal corruption down to the most I can't think of anything that hits almost everybody the same as torturing children.
Well, it's basically like sadistically evil. I mean, at that point,
exactly.
Yeah, it's not even. Yeah, it's off the charts. I mean, satanically,
right. So
demonically inspired.
Yeah. So my feeling is they're going to go as far as they need to go, and they're really, when you think about it, not through social media, but they are in control of the information that comes out up until they would have to leave the White House. And I've been joking about it. They're going to call it Gitmo TV. And I think what if they need to do it, they will cut everything to get rid of all distractions from the American people. They'll cut your cell phone. They'll cut the internet. And I'm talking about the good guys cutting it. They'll cut off social media. And when you turn on your television set, you got one channel, and it's Gitmo TV. And I think they've already got confessions from a lot of people. They've got a lot of video. They've got a lot of stuff that they could wake up the American people real fast, and they'll have no other distractions but to sit there and watch it. And I think it's a perfect plan they have. I really do. There's so many different scenarios. I don't see any scenario really where Biden wins. And if that happened, I guarantee the people on the right won't stand for it. The Republic won't stand it. Texas saying they would leave the Union, that's the first.
Well, they're not threatening. They're just saying we just want to start having some discussions. We're not threatening leaving, but we're saying we got to have some discussions because it could lead there. The last time I heard, that's kind of the direction they were starting to think seriously and saying, hey, we're not threatening anything at this point, but we're saying let's come to the table in a big way, or we're just starting to make our voice be heard. That's kind of what I got.
Yeah, well, and it's under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. All these different territories that were in the United States, they chose to join the Union, and they, so to speak, signed a contract, the Constitution, to abide by it. And that Constitution also gives them an escape clause, and that's the 10th Amendment. I have problems with the Civil War because of that. The states that wanted to secede, that was their right to secede. And we're told some screwy history. It didn't have anything to do with slavery, at least when it started. Had to do, believe it or not, with what it always is in America, taxation. And that was actually what was going on. The South was getting totally ripped off by taxation by the North, and the North controlled all the factories. It was just a weird situation. But they had the right to secede. They're given that right under the 10th Amendment. And so was Texas. Now, I know the left has said if Trump stays in there, Washington, Oregon, California, Illinois, New York, they've already said they would secede from the Union. But I'm telling you, they won't go anywhere because as soon as they wake up and realize they won't get another federal dollar.
Yeah, I agree with that.
To help their bankrupt states.
They're so broke. Yeah.
Yes, they're way negative bankrupt. That'll be the end of it. Whereas these red states, they're not bankrupt. Almost every red state has a balanced budget amendment, or they're very close to balanced budget anyway. It's not a big deal. But these other states threatening that, is like, my thing is goodbye.
So for the average person, though, if this scenario plays out, maybe kind of mention kind of what to expect, because from my understanding, I don't know if it's just going to be those cities. I think it's going to be utter chaos, man. I really do. I think they are going to go ballistic. They're going to go demonic. Yeah, like it will make what happened in 2020 look like a choir group running around the cities, in my opinion. Like, I think they are going to go absolutely insane. Now, you're mentioning that he's going to do the Insurrection Act, military, all this. But in the meantime, there's going to be a lot of burning. There's going to be a lot of looting. There's going to be a lot of violence. And quite honestly, that's still concerning, is it not?
Yeah, and I agree that will happen, but I think the information flow will be so strong that there'll be so many red pills on the table for people to pick up that it will be a lot less than what we think it is at the moment.
Gotcha.
It'll be controllable, let's put it that way. Now, I'm not saying it'll be controlled in weeks or whatever. I mean, it might go through the whole year. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But we're in for very rough times either way, because I don't care what scenario you look at. There's going to be a certain percentage of the people that aren't going to take it.
Correct. Yes, on both sides. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, look at Antifa. They just trashed. I don't know if you heard today. They trashed one of Nancy Pelosi's $1 million houses, or two of them. One guy went right in front of her. He's a YouTuber. Went to her mansion, defecated on her driveway, filmed it, and then they spray painted her.
Why though? Why? Because Nancy Pelosi was a big fan of Antifa. I mean, she was almost congratulating them for what they were doing. She didn't actually, say anything negative. So why in the world would they attack her?
Well, isn't it funny how they attacked also the Portland governor?
I agree. I totally agree.
Or whatever.
Yeah, I know they'll turn on their own. I know that, but it just seems really bizarre.
Well, they're pissed at her because she was only given $600, and according to the message they wrote on the garage anyway with the spray paint, they want free rent and free housing for all.
Oh yeah, you heard about the hotel that got hijacked. I don't know what day it's on right now. You heard about that? That's happening in. I believe in Washington, Tacoma. They just went into a travel lodge, and poor business owner, he's just a small business, owns a travel lodge, and they said they paid for the first night for all these people, and now they're occupying 16 rooms and they won't leave. And the police are doing nothing about it, and he's almost having to let all his hotel staff go. He's almost going to be walking away, turning all the power off, and he's like, he's trying to come to an agreement. They're like, no, it should be a right. We should have housing. And they're just saying, no, we're not leaving. So they've literally occupied. They're hurting his business. But it's unbelievable the level of, you think, okay, the police are just going to deal with it. The police are dealing with it anymore, right? That's the scary part.
Lot, right. But just to give you an update there, the police did get him out.
Good. Okay, good. I didn't see how the follow-up, but I knew, it had to come to a conclusion. But I guess going on the Antifa train, it's insane. If their demands aren't met, how crazy they will go. And my point is this, that they're going to coordinate behind the scenes, and they plan this. I don't know if you read much on the Integrity Transition Project. They were basically saying, here's the war gaming, what will happen. But here's what will happen if Trump actually takes it. These are our plans. Siege on the White House. This is what we're going to coordinate on the cities. Like, they have this all mapped out. And this was literally documents on the website. This is not some fringe thing. This was literally, I think, the left kind of wargaming all these scenarios, and it was like absolutely nasty. That's why I've told people the best case scenario is Trump winning for sure. Don't get me wrong, but it'll probably be a year of utter absolute chaos, but it's still a better result than if Trump doesn't basically pull this off. They scam everyone, they rig the election, and all of a sudden they just walk in and they have all three, the Senate, the Congress. I think that, to me, is the most, like you said, such a dark abyss and so horrifying of a thought at that point. Even though I know that God's in control and there's a reason for it, I just think, guys, buckle up, because you're now going to be prepared for such a transition and such a new America within a short amount of time. You won't recognize America within 4 to 8 years.
Right. Well, look what they're doing in Georgia. My understanding is that they were subpoenaed to have to turn over the absentee ballots for investigation, and the governor, which is a Republican, and the Secretary of State, Republican, they've actually brought in industrial shredders to shred them, shredding the evidence. Man, crazy. So there's no rule of law. There's no justice. Actually, there's a two-tier justice system. There's one for the elites and one for the rest of us.
Yeah.
And so there's no justice in the land. And justice delayed is justice denied. Where's Hillary Clinton in jail? Where's James Comey in jail? These people are perjured themselves. It's proven. There's no doubt about it. We've got nothing but evil running everything.
Yeah, Hunter Biden. I mean, the list goes on. The list goes on, right? I mean, and it was just a tragic thing that it's like any other time they would investigate, but they're like, yeah, no. It's like there's evidence. There's someone supporting that they have the exact files that were emailed, and that he claimed it was his actual laptop. Yet they're like, yeah, no, Russian collusion. Yeah. It's like, oh my goodness. Yeah. You're right. Well, I mean, 70 million people got woken up to how incredibly rigged this system is. So guys, that is the good news. We're always screaming and we're like, why won't people wake up and understand the system? We literally are now witnessing half of America waking up and going, oh my goodness, this is bad. So the good news is there's a massive army now that's basically saying enough's enough. Before, we're just kind of fringe truthers going, we're trying to wake up our neighbors and saying, guys, look at the election. Look at the Republicans and Democrats. They're all one party. Guys, we're now at a new level of wherever it's going to go and those scenarios play out, the fact is 75 million Americans are like, now it's going to get real. I mean, like I see civil war, or I see a complete divide. I don't even know how the two parties can live together in the same country. But again, it will get to such a point where they might have to coexist inside the country if it continues on this way, and separate completely. Like it might get to that point because it's going so off track. So rather than one party taking over another one, it might just completely form two completely independent things and kind of morph. Like you said, the Republican and Democrats are going to be no longer. They're going to be, something, two new entities.
They might as well just dissolve and form together the whatever you want to call it, the old guard party,
correct,
or the corrupt party, whatever
correct,
you want to call it.
Yep. And then whatever you want to call the new ones, but again, this is what we're seeing that we've never seen before. We've never seen 75. I mean, guys, think about this. I mean, I think Trump, Republicans, he beat all records, did he not? In the last, I don't know how many years, about pretty much across the board.
Yeah, and remember that everything they're giving us on the left is an illusion. My understanding is that it will come out that Trump got close to 100 million and Biden 40 million, and that makes sense compared to what I was seeing everywhere.
Sure,
I didn't see any flotillas for Biden. Well, I live in Phoenix. Phoenix has 5 million people in it, 5 million, and he and Kamala Harris came just before the election to a rally here. And I think it was 8 people showed up, 8 in Phoenix out of 5 million.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more exciting to watch grass grow than it is to watch Joe Biden.
No, and even the left, they did surveys, and they would interview people, and they'd say, "Hey, what do you like about Biden? Like, what about policies? What?" People didn't care at all. They just hated Trump. They just hated Trump. The fact is, there was no excitement at all for Biden. I mean, it's the most lackluster Democrat president probably in the history of all America. There was nothing. No one cared. No one knew anything about him. They were just like, heck, man, better than Trump. I'm talking about the left, right? The guy literally has dementia. I mean, yeah. Here's another scary thought. Personally, I think that, if anything, I didn't think that even if Biden gets in the administration, I didn't even think he was going to reign very long. I think something's going to come up. Medically speaking, Kamala is going to take over because medically something happens. But I think they're grooming. Why they don't care about Biden on the other side is they're grooming Kamala to basically take over. In my opinion, being the first woman president of color, but also you want to talk about Hillary? I said to people jokingly, I said, if you had a choice between Hillary Clinton, which we all know, insane, or Kamala Harris, I would gladly take Hillary over Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris is a whole new level of evil, in my opinion. At least she's the old guard kind of evil Hillary, but Kamala literally wants to turn it Marxist and communist. You know what I mean? It's such a level that we're, the less of two evils.
Yeah. Yeah, my understanding is her real handler, other than, again, she's got these big Chinese connections, but her real handler is Obama.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, and I've seen evidence to support that. But either way, I like focusing on the fact of what you're saying. Like, we're going to be massively surprised. We all know it's going to be a bumpy road. That's fine. We can weather the bumpy storm. The fact is, can you imagine? I'm just sitting here right now thinking the excitement. It will be more exciting to see that happen than Trump winning in the first place. And I was rooting for Trump way back when he was, standing there with 13 other people and everyone was laughing at him. I was like, Trump's going to take it. I said that early on. But to me, like you said, this point in history that we're moving to, it is so critical. And guys, this is beyond just a Trump-Biden situation. Because honestly, I'm at a point looking into this situation that if the things were flipped, the whole point is we need transparency in the elections. And regardless what side you're on, you should always want to prove without a shadow of doubt with evidence that the election was fair and it was done right and correct and legal, right? So Biden should not want to actually avoid this at all. He should be encouraging and saying, absolutely, I don't want to be a president thinking that it was scammed. I want to get this all on the table. So quite honestly, guys, the system is in place, but we're realizing that quite honestly, there's not many places to go when all of a sudden the Supreme Court will be like, yeah, no, we're not even going to look at the evidence. Not like we're not even going to rule on it. We're not even going to look at it. That's a whole new level of corruption, and the whole half of America is waking up to that. So there is good news here. There's massively good news. I will say that.
Yeah, and just like you said, Biden and Harris, they should be out there saying, hey, please seize these machines. Please look at it.
100%. 100%.
And we're getting the exact opposite, even from the opposite party. See, there is no opposite party. The Georgia Republican, whatever. Again, he's got the governor. He's got connections to China. It's just China has infiltrated from within. I've talked about on the stream. I think our country goes all the way back to Jacob crossing his hands and putting them on Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and giving them the blessing. To me, that was the foundation of America right there, because Ephraim and Manasseh, to me, are England and the United States. And you go back to how God was dealing with them and said, if you do this and do that, you'll have blessings. But if not, one of the places, I think it's in Deuteronomy, it says it'll be the enemy from within your gates.
Yeah.
That will get you.
I agree with that. Yes.
And that's exactly what's happened.
Well, yeah. It's literally a takeover without any blood being shed. It literally is an indoctrination takeover by getting all the children indoctrinated. And really what we're seeing right now is all these people that are in governors and mayors, they were basically going through the schooling system, learning communism and Marxism. They were professors teaching them. We're just seeing the results of basically the 70s, 80s. I mean, it's like this long process. But I think a lot of people have figured out it's way better to do it this way without any blood being shed. You know what I mean? To take over a country. And quite honestly, there's many books written on how to take over America and take over countries. And we're actually seeing it play out as far as the Communist Manifesto. This is how you do it long term.
It's called the art of Zinchu or whatever it is, where you don't fire a shot. Mm-hmm. You look for the enemy's weakness. Our weakness is corruption. You can have leaders that can be corrupted here because they're corrupt capitalists. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what's happened. That's why Nancy Pelosi has 4, $1 million homes. And
well, speaking of money, and we were talking about riches and stuff. I think it's important just to really quickly let's segue over this. Any outcome that's coming up, what can you expect in the next, say, 2, 3, 4 years based on just the monetary system, the economy? Are we in a bubble? Is everything going to go along smooth for a while? Or is there a major crash and something bad coming, regardless of these outcomes, whether it's Trump or not? The fact is, what is going on with the economy and what should people prepare for or start looking into to maybe help them if it does go sour, I personally believe it does, but I want you to comment on what you see just in a nutshell based on what's happening with the economy.
I see no matter who wins this, and it's just going to be which way we go down. Gold, silver, and the cryptocurrencies, they're all poised to go up in either scenario. And the reason why I say that is because let's just say Biden goes in. We're going to be back immediately into the type of economy that was under Obama at best, but now with double and triple the debt. But we'd still be under the old system because he's already said Janet Yellen would be the Secretary of the Treasury, and she used to be the head of the Fed. Mm-hmm. And those on my stream know anyway that the Fed has been subjugated. Trump put the Fed underneath the Treasury. Mm-hmm. And it's a way to get the debt off of the U.S. people and onto the Fed's balance book. And most people don't know that. It's not being reported. That is a setup for a reset right there. Either way, it's going to be a reset.
Okay.
There's a bubble that has to go away. We are beyond the unsustainable debt. And we talked, I think, the last time saying if they did one stimulus check, more than one, they're just going to have to keep doing it.
Correct. Yep.
And let's just say under this system, they would have to keep doing it. So let's assume Biden gets in there. It's going to be universal. What do they call it? Universal
income. Yeah, universal
income.
It
has to be.
Yeah.
At least until it all implodes, because that's the only way to sustain. People can't sustain their own debt anymore.
No.
Much less the government. So that's why all this is necessary. To bridge the gap until they implode it. And of course, when they implode it, say Biden said, I look at that as the dark side.
Do you think, real quick, do you think they're going to pull hey, if you want your next stimulus or your check, you just got to make sure your vaccines are up to date? Do you think they're going to pull any of those things? Like saying, hey, we're not mandatory, but if you want to kind of get anything from us, these are our qualifications. Do you think they're going to pull a little bit more control on getting this universal income? Do you think there's going to be...
I think what it'll be
strings?
is you'll have lack of protection in from the corporate world, and I'll explain it real fast. You already have hotels and places saying that if you don't have the vaccine, you can't stay here, or businesses saying if you don't get the vaccine, you won't be able to work here, type of thing.
Yeah.
And I think what'll happen is on the dark, let's say Biden's in there, that'll be right up the rally because they're into controlling of the people.
Correct.
That's why you have in the more Democrat type of states,
Sure.
the more control, the more masking, and this is all the mask, keep your mouth shut.
So what happens with Trump? Because I think we all pretty much on the stream would agree, okay, if it goes that direction, okay, it's going to get insane control, just nonsense. But what happens if it's Trump? Because we both agree the economy's still coming to an end as far as its current, reserve currency of the world, as far as the U.S. dollar. But explain maybe how it changes under Trump, if that's the scenario, as far as what's going to be better under Trump when it comes to the monetary or those type of provisions.
Under Trump, he's already started this, so at least I have a path to start down. Of course, I might not know all the intricacies or whatever, but I'll take my best shot at it. Like I said, he has put the Federal Reserve under the Treasury. That's the first step in getting rid of the national debt. My understanding also is that he has identified $100 trillion of money that Wall Street has stolen. And he's made some sort of deal with them to get, I've heard different figures, all the way from 17 trillion up to whatever number. But he will pay off, I think, personally, the foreign national debt that we owe. Not the debt that we owe to Americans, because the debt we owe to Americans doesn't really make sense. You can get rid of that and say no more taxes, which I think is coming. You're going to have excise taxes, but it'll get rid of income taxes and things like that. That's way down the road. But in any case, there has to be a reset under that also, because no matter who's in there, you cannot sustain what's going on. It's it's already mathematically done.
Yeah. We're both in agreement there, 100%. It's mathematically impossible. It's coming to an end. The question is, how long can they kick it down the road? We're surprised already that they've been able to kick it down the road this far. I always don't underestimate them. That's why I always give it grace period of like in the next decade, it's coming to an end for sure. You had said, probably in the next year. I've said, next year or two. But guys, it literally mathematically is coming to an end. That's why they don't care about printing money, sending this stuff out. Yeah, they do these charades and say, oh, we're going to, discuss if it's going to be 600 or 2,000. But the fact of the matter is they're going to move into printing so much money. I guess 2020, it was almost 5 trillion in 1 year. More money was created in 1 year than I think the last 100 or something. It was a ridiculous amount. It was a lot, right?
Right.
There's a lot, guys. Like, it's going way out of control. And every country that's done this has moved into hyperinflation or debasing their currency, which means prices are about to skyrocket. Bread's going to go up, utilities are going to go up, rent's going to go up, like all this, and it will not be able to catch up to the falling dollar. That's why everyone's running into like gold, silver, crypto. You're going to see crypto explode everywhere, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or other stuff. Start looking into crypto. I don't care what you've heard. The fact of the matter is you need to start diversifying, because if you're in the dollar, you are going to get creamed the most. You want to at least diversify out of that. So, we can do another show. I've done other shows, on the financial aspects, but I'm saying, guys, it's very important, because regardless of what goes down, you want to be financially protected somewhat and just have some options. Start looking into some smart options. I've been talking about this. Rich has been talking about precious metals, man, longer than, way back, 7 years ago? Like, it wasn't that your first thing when you started your channel? You were into precious metals?
Yeah. Well, I bought my first ounce of gold in 2004.
Yeah, like a long time.
Yeah,
well, you were knowing your channel actually was birthed based on economy, financial stuff, was it not?
Yeah, I think it was 2007, 2008. And it was, that's why it's called MrThriveAndSurvive.
Yeah.
It had to do with prepping, getting out of the monetary system, protecting yourself. And I always tell the story, even though there hasn't been even though 2008 was a financial crisis, there wasn't anything that really affected me to where I needed it. But I had my own financial crisis because of health issues.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't into gold and silver, I wouldn't have survived. And prepping, I made it 3 years with zero income. And it was only because I had prepared for that.
Oh yeah, I explain it all the time with my silver. I put my down payment on my home, right, to basically get the mortgage. I used like silver to. I mean, it has been a beautiful, not just a safe bet or a hedge. It literally is a preserver of wealth long term. It really is. I mean, really quickly, I use that analogy. When I was born in 1972, an ounce of gold was $35, and at that time, $35 would buy you a nice Armani's men's suit and I think a pair of shoes. Well, fast forward right now to 2020. If you had that same ounce of gold, you could cash it in and get an Armani suit and a pair of shoes. But here's the thing, guys. If you took $35 in 1972 and put it in a box and you fast forward to 2020, what's that $35 going to buy you? Hardly a t-shirt, maybe a nice t-shirt. You know what I mean? So what's happened over time is not that gold is going up, the dollar is going down. Guys, long term, if you want to protect, because money, like here's the difference between money and currency. Money has always been a store of value. The one lie that you're believing is the currency in your pocket is real money. It's not. It's paper. It's worthless, and it's losing value, and they're stealing from you while you sleep, because the more they print, the less you have in your pocket. Is that safe to say, Rich?
Yeah, and one of the, you might not have, I don't know if anybody else has ever said this to you or not, but one of the biggest disadvantages that people always said to me about, at the raw core of it, they'll say, you can't eat your gold and silver.
Yeah.
And I should say, yeah, you can't eat a dollar bill either. But their point was you could take the dollar bill and go out and buy something with it. But that seems like it's a negative. But because, now, I don't know about anybody else, but if my money is in a bank account and I can open it up an app or just, buy something and say, take it out of this account, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tend to run out of money that way. But because gold and silver is not in that system, because it's under my bed, so to speak, it's not, but let's say it is.
Yep.
And I'd have to drive it to somewhere and convert it or mail it.
I was horrible at saving. Like, honestly, Rich, I was the worst saver in the world. If I had liquid thing, I was the worst spender. Honestly, it saved me so much, because you're right. It takes a bit of effort, right? You got to figure out, okay, I got to cash this out. So by holding it, you're just preserving your wealth, and you're becoming wealthier over time, especially if you're not good at saving. It's a brilliant way to actually store up and save money. I mean, because at the end of the day, you want to save for any day. It was provision with Joseph. What did he say? He goes, 7 years of plenty, but there will be 7 years of famine. In the 7 years of plenty, store up for the 7 years of famine. Guys, if we're moving into a famine, you want to store up now. That's just straight up biblical advice, and that's exactly what you see illustrated. It's smart, and that's what God wants you to do. If you understand that you're moving towards darker times, or there could be problems in the economy, now is the time to start preparing and save. And he wants you to save money. It's all throughout the Bible. Guys, currency is not money. So all I'm going to say is silver, gold, crypto, that is more truer money than the paper you're holding. It might be hard for you to understand. Look into it. I want to say real quick as well, I do a weekly show with Patricia Steer and Paul Lindbergh. We do a weekly show on crypto called Axion Today. I'll put the link in the description, AXION Today. We do it every Monday, same time. Guys, if you want to learn more about crypto, what we're doing, come and join the journey. But again, it's absolutely exciting. We're on episode 7 this Monday. Check it out. But start looking into crypto. Even if you're not looking at what we're doing, start investigating it. Don't believe the lies that, the government or the CIA or it's all corrupt or it's all going to go to zero. Play around, do your own research. That's all I want to conclude with is do your own research. Like I've said for 6 years on my channel, the motto is this: do your own research. Make up your own decision once you've done that. But take the time. This is very important. That's why I'm bringing this up, because we're moving into these times. And what Rich is saying, based on any scenario that's going to play out, Trump, no Trump, Biden, it doesn't matter. The economy is going to get very, very dark. You can prepare now, because I personally believe that we might have a little bit more time. Rich might think it's coming, within months or some. I think we might even have a year and a half. But we could be wrong. It could happen. Literally, we could wake up one morning and it's free fall speed. Everything is crashing. Right, Rich? That's the way it happens. You don't know. It happens when you don't expect it.
Yeah, well, I expect that. This what people are calling the Sarah or Gesera, where you have a reset and you go into it's a good reset, where you can wipe out debt and things like that.
Oh, that's the Jubilee. You're talking about the Jubilee.
Yeah, that's what I think is coming.
That's interesting.
But that is also very. I don't know about Bitcoin because I haven't studied it enough with different things like that. But with gold, silver, they will have to be the standard instead of just there's got to be and commodities.
Correct.
Oil.
Correct.
Like countries that are big in oil, like we are. But gold, silver, oil, other commodities, they're going to be, I think probably the U.S. will probably believe it or not, I think they'll take gold for a national.
Even if
base.
it's digital, they're going to back it by gold or something of value
Right.
to give it. Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. So whether it's digital or not, they're going to back it most likely by gold or commodities. But guys, we're going to move away from this nonsense of backing it on nothing. It's on thin air. It does, it was always pegged to gold, and we don't have time to run down that. Watch, a couple episodes back on Celebrated Truth. I go through the whole scenario and the history and what they did and why they removed it from gold. But all throughout history, there's always been a peg. Gold has always been considered real wealth, and they've just been pulling off this illusion for a long time, and unfortunately it's coming to a very, very disastrous end. I mean, it will look back in history, in my opinion, Rich, as people are going to scratch their heads and going, what in the world were they thinking? Because it's not just the US, guys, it's every country of the world are printing like it's going out of style, and they are just printing, or I should say adding zeros and zeros and zeros to the computer, and it's coming out of nowhere, and honestly it is going to come to an end real soon.
Yeah, and let me just add two things real quickly
Sure.
to that. One is because of just the population itself, they'll have to peg the nation. They'll have to get together and say, all right, internationally, gold was 50,000 an ounce. And I'm just throwing numbers out there. It's not a prediction. Silver, $500 an ounce. This is under the good scenario. Under the bad scenario, what you could see happen is when the stock markets crash, like these are every major crash in the stock market since the great one in 1921 has been engineered, in my opinion. It's a way that Wall Street just says, okay, this is a zero-sum game. We're taking all the common folks' money off the table and we're putting it in our pocket. Gold and silver at the beginning of a financial crisis almost always fall. If you into gold and silver some and you're just getting into it and everything's falling, just look at that as a buying opportunity.
Deflation before inflation. I agree with that. Yes.
Right. Because what will happen is you're just picking up bargains, and then gold and silver outperform. It's like when the 2008 financial crisis hit. I can remember I was married then, and my wife, she was all upset because gold and silver were going down. And I'm like, we need to buy more. This is, because you always have to think contrarian. And then what happened was they wanted to stop deflation. And they do that by printing. And that's the idea behind gold and silver then going up. Mm-hmm. And then you had the largest bull market ever in gold and silver happen between 2008 and 2011 or 12, whatever it was that it ended.
Yep.
Until this correction, and there's always corrections up and down. But don't get spooked if the bad scenario happens, what I'm calling the bad scenario, when it goes down first. You're going to be in the long run the one that makes it. And remember, whatever the value of the gold and silver is,
yeah,
there's fluctuations up and down, but like you said, it'll still buy the same amount it did before that.
Guys, and when we say gold and silver, we mean silver. Like, go into silver. It's $25. Get 2, 4, 8, 10. It doesn't matter. You're going to have more than pretty much the rest of the world. Get silver. Anybody can afford $25. Do an ounce a month for the next year. Have 12 ounces. And trust me, those 12 ounces, you're going to be incredibly happy 10 years from now having 12 ounces of silver. And it's $25 an ounce. So forget the gold, because sometimes it's like Bitcoin. If I say, hey, look into Bitcoin, people are like, guys, it's like $32,000 a Bitcoin. Guys, you can buy $20 a month into Bitcoin. Start looking into cryptocurrencies. It's all three: gold, silver, Bitcoin. You need to look at that whole paradigm, really start studying it, because quite honestly, it really will change your life if you really start to understand what we're talking about. We're not saying pile it up like you're, some king or something. Have just a little bit. You don't have to go crazy with it. If you even just have a few ounces of silver, which is like maybe $100 for 4, if you have those 4, you might be surprised what those 4 will be able to do for you. Worst case scenario. Would you agree, Rich?
Yeah, and not only that, but something I didn't even realize until recently: the junk silver.
Yeah,
which is pre 1964 or 1964 and before U.S. coins, and I'm sure other countries too had a certain percentage of silver. But recently, when I wanted to sell some of my silver, and that's the thing, I can get money for it in minutes if I want to. But because I have to get my car and drive there, I don't do it like if I had an app and I can just buy something. So I do save with it.
Yeah. And
I will only drive there if it is like an emergency. But I needed money, and I went there and did it. But he had a whole bunch of junk silver, and I have junk silver. People had sent it to me, as gifts, for helping them out, with prepping or whatever. And I never thought much of it. And I was like, how much do you pay for that? And he told me it was a $1, I think, and it was $17 and something. And I'm doing the quick calculations in my head. I'm like, you know what? He's paying pretty much because it's 90%. They were 90% silver coins. So that's 90% of an ounce. And that worked out right. I'm like, so is a dime this much? Like, are you paying like $1.75, $1.80 for a dime? He said, yes.
Yeah.
So, you can buy a dime for $1.80.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that we don't have time to go into all that, but honestly, guys, the dimes and nickels you have, there's nothing real in them anymore. Like they've diluted, just like they did in Rome and Greece. They've always done this. Yep. They've diluted the money, even your nickels and dimes. They took out the silver from that. That's why we're talking about junk silver, which is like predates and gets to old coins. But the point is this: governments have done this. It's nothing new. This time it's just hyperdrive. I mean, this is so bonkers, out of control, and all the countries of the world are doing it. So we're not talking about just America falling economy-wise. We're talking about the whole world getting sucked into, in my opinion, a bit of a depression for a bit of time in that Great Reset. Personally, I think it's going to go down that way. It'll be a little bit of a painful period, and then up we go again. But the whole world is going to be affected because every country are printing like it's no tomorrow, backed by nothing. So yeah, look into those things, guys, because you're all through 2020. You're going to hear about gold's going up. You're going to hear about precious metals. You're going to hear about cryptocurrencies. What's this? My friend's talking about Bitcoin, guys. Yeah, it could go down. Remember when it went up before? And Rich and I were talking like 2 years ago, and we were going through charts, and he pretty much scaled it. We were like right on track. I'm talking to Rich. He's like, guys, it's going to do this. It's going to crash again. It's going to do this. And this has happened multiple times. But the last time it went up to about, I think it was around 20,000 American, and then it shot way down to 3. But now it's going up to like 30,000. It's probably going to shoot down to 15, 18. The point is, over time, long term, these have got huge potentials long term. Don't think short term. This is only your long term thinking plan. Like, I'm staking this, for the future, not short term. Just sit on it, get a little bit, and quite honestly, it could literally change your life and protect you and your family. So I'm big on that. So we're going to cut off real quick here from Revolution Radio. So thanks for tuning in. We're going to do the after show on YouTube. So join us up over there. We really appreciate everyone coming in. And if you want to join us, youtube.com/celebrate truth. All right, we are on. Rich, I know you're probably getting tired, but we'll kind of start wrapping this up here. But everyone's kind of right glued in. That just the time flew. Like already we're at the end of the second hour. So maybe let's kind of just follow this up. We're in agreement that we're moving towards this type of situation, monetary wise, regardless of the outcome. So guys, regardless of the way this is going to play out, economy wise, start looking into this situation. Honestly, it's incredibly important. I'm going to be speaking about it lots. But getting into these scenarios, like concluding it, what do you see kind of transpiring, basically, happening here next week? Do you think it's going to get incredibly chaotic instantaneously, or do you think it's going to build up to the 20th? Like, if this takes place, do you think there's going to be kind of a bubbling up and then an absolute attack kind of around the 20th? Or do you think riots and chaos are going to start immediately after what's revealed on Wednesday happens?
Whatever day comes down, and I'm convinced 100% still that it's going to be Trump, whatever day that becomes obvious, that's the day the riots will start, or that hour they will start. So you're saying if they basically say, yep, no, we're calling it right now on Wednesday, then it starts immediately? Yes. Okay. That's what now, along those lines with what we just talked about, before we leave the subject of gold, silver, sure. Look for infrastructure to be hit. Antifa has been trained, my understanding is, with Chinese money this time, just like last time. Chinese money all of a sudden had pallets of bricks show up so that they could take the bricks and throw them through windows and stuff like that. This time they have been giving things and training to try to take out infrastructure. So before gold and silver, if you don't have the basics, food, water, what if you had no electricity, no running water for a couple weeks? Do you have a scenario where you can take care of that? If you can say yes with that, then move on to spending your money on precious metals or whatever, or Bitcoin, whatever. Good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, because it's definitely go in steps and make sure you got some food provisions and water, and then if you need
arms and stuff and all that. But yeah, kind of go in that order, because sometimes people are like, food and water is more important than gold and silver. It's like, guys, start with food and water first. We're just saying have a little bit. You don't have to go crazy here. And everyone can afford $25 to have an ounce of silver. Based on history and what that little ounce you buy right now is going to be worth in the future, it might surprise you. It has throughout history, and it's going to continue to do so, in my opinion. But also the digital versions of basically the same premise of this very finite supply that's precious, that is hard to replicate, is happening right now in the digital space. And quite honestly, the corruption and the evil cryptocurrencies are going to be coming left, right, and center. Government coins, Fed coins, whatever. Understand that there's going to be selection. For the first time in history, people have now given the choice what money they want to deal with. Never in history has it ever happened before. That's the interesting thing here, is like, it's almost rich in a way. Sometimes, like, you talk about these miracles or God stepping in. It's almost like they get all this corruption, they get all the mainstream media, and then all of a sudden the internet comes along and they're like, oh crap, right? Oh, the internet. Yeah. What are we going to do about it? Right? It throws stuff back. And then all of a sudden they're moving along. They got all the financial, all of a sudden, boom, Bitcoin comes out in 2008. And it's like, what the heck is this? Oh, let's just ignore it. Oh, maybe we should take it serious. No. And all of a sudden it starts dominating, and they're like, hey, okay, let's just shut this thing down. They're like, sir, we can't shut it down. What do you mean you can't shut it down? It's decentralized. What does that mean? It means there's no way to do this. Well, how do we shut it down? Well, sir, we'd really have to, shut off the entire internet forever. Well, I mean, that's their entire grid, which is so silly when people are like, they're going to turn off the internet. But it's about education, guys. Understand that they can't do anything to stop this cryptocurrency thing. Even when you see regulations, trust me, it's a runaway train. This is only 10 years in, and the world has not seen how crazy cryptocurrencies are about to become. Just like the internet, when early days are like, what's this? And it's a fad. The same way it's going to happen. And again, I'm a huge fan of gold, silver, and Bitcoin, or in crypto. You should have all three of those. So don't think it's one's better than the other. Have them all, because like Rich said, the nice thing about gold and silver is it's hard to it's good for savings because it's kind of harder. You can sell it, but crypto might be a lot liquid. You might have to be able to send someone and be able to do something very quickly. And quite honestly, no middleman, no banks. You literally become your own bank. It's like sending an email back and forth to someone. That's the beauty of crypto. So look into that, because I think it's super important. And quite honestly, as they have their grid set up, you want to be outside of it. We always talk about being outside of the matrix. Well, in the same way, try to get outside of their financial matrix, because anyone that's kept in that cluster are going to be suffocated and destroyed, in my opinion, if you hold on to their system. Would you say that's kind of accurate, Rich, based on kind of what they're setting up for everyone to fall under?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of twists and turns that can happen in the interim, and like I said, I think we're gonna end up in a very good place. But that might be 5 years from now or whatever. There'll be a lot of bumpy roads on the way there. You can't just say, okay, everybody's forgiven all their debt, although that would be nice. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can domestically do that, but when you get into, we owe this country so much money, that's where it gets.
Well, China's going to be a little ticked off, because I think they owe like 3 trillion, 4 trillion, and it's not easy for them. People say, well, why don't they just dump it? Well, it kind of hurts them. Like, that's the whole thing, is everyone's gridlocked. But guys, you can't just default. Even though the U.S. is probably going to say, sorry, we're broke, we can't pay you back. Countries are not going to be too happy about it, and it's going to happen all over the place. They're not going to be too happy about the facts like, you owe us a lot of money. Sorry, we can't pay. I mean, it's kind of like, the government owes you money, and they're like, we have no money. It's like, where's my Social Security? Sorry, we're broke. Like, what are you going to do, sue the government? It's like you're kind of deadlocked, but the fact is we're coming to a point where everyone's just going to be deadlocked, and they're going to we have to start from scratch again. Unfortunately, that $10,000 you had in your bank on the new currency they come out with is probably going to be $4,000 worth. So it's good news is you didn't lose it all, but now you got $4,000 sitting in your bank in the new currency before you had 10,000 of the old.
Yeah. Well, what a lot of people don't realize, and I didn't realize this for years, it just really came to me about a year or two ago, although I'd heard the concept, it sort of just blew in one ear and out the other. The entire national debt of the United States can be done away with one stroke of a pen, and that is repealing the Federal Reserve Act.
Yes.
This is why Trump is putting all the debt now right directly onto the Federal Reserve's back.
That's awesome.
So it can be immediately wiped out. Like I said, the only thing you get into, which is weird, is the foreign debt. And if China's involved in the election, the way I read his executive orders, all the assets are frozen and we don't have to pay him anything. But if he goes in and takes $100 trillion from, here's the thing anyway, you can say the whole U.S. dollar system is gone. We're going back to constitutional money, sort of like the greenbacks. That's probably what really got Lincoln shot. Mm-hmm. like Kennedy. Kennedy started coming out with silver coins and stuff, and he was moving away from the Fed, amongst other things. That's probably what got the presidents that have been assassinated in this country have all tried to get rid of the central bank, and that's a fact.
Yeah.
Every single one that was assassinated had something to do with trying to get rid of the central bank.
That's true.
And, Lincoln tried to get rid of it, and he shot. And guess what? I think it was the first thing that Grant did was reinstate the central bank, or get rid of the order that Lincoln had done that was going to get rid of it. I don't know the exact history, but
wasn't it Andrew Jackson that went toe-to-toe with them?
Yes, I believe. Yes.
He's the one that survived, didn't he? Or did Andrew Jackson? I think
Andrew
he stood
Jackson,
up to them.
Yeah, he stood up to them, and that's why a lot of people think that, or compare Trump to Andrew Jackson, because they think he's going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
He's already done it.
It's similar. Yeah, it is very similar. Yeah, it's very similar.
Yeah, he says you're not independent, you're underneath the Treasury.
Yep.
And that means Donald Trump is the boss of the Fed. And that has never happened since 1913 when the Fed was instituted.
Interesting. Well, I mean, all I can say is, like, Wednesday, guys, so much is going to take place. We're going to have part 2 of this radio broadcast. Most likely, we're going to have other people on as well, because there's going to be so much to talk about next Saturday when all of a sudden this has already taken place, and now we can kind of assess things and see where things are going. So we want to have Richard coming back next Saturday, and hopefully we'll get a couple of other guests on, just so we can kind of have more of a panelist show and different perspectives, but really lay it out, because we are going to know so much more in a few days. That's something for sure. So looking forward to having you back, and get prepared for, study everything, because we're going to want your full analysis going forward based on all the events that have taken place. No matter which way it goes, I still think there's going to be a ton to talk about next Saturday. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. And let me just say to everybody, have faith in God. He is not done with this country.
Amen. Yeah.
This is the one country that was dedicated to God at its inception, and based on the principles of Judeo-Christian life and morals and things like that. It's the only country ever that was dedicated to God, not only from its inception, like 1776. I'm talking about when the 1615 or whatever it was, arrival of the Pilgrims, and that they all dedicated the land when they came here to God and for His use. And again, that goes back to the Ephraim Manasseh thing. And to me, it's all tied together. And I'm starting to have different. My whole thing with God is I'm going through like an evolution in my mind with certain things.
You're not even 99.9. You're 100%, which surprises me when you're saying, guys, I'm 100%. I'm very careful ever to say I'm 100% on anything along the lines of future events or things that are going to take place, which is fine. I just know you're that confident, so it really excites me, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I am
to hear.
extremely. Yeah, I do not see any scenario where Biden is the next president. None.
All right. Oh, so there's no scenario that will take place. So just hypothetically, what happens if it does? Like, will it rock your whole world? Will you take some time off? Like, what would it do? I'm just saying hypothetically, because I always play these out. What would it do to you? Would you take some time off and really assess, what the heck? How could I be 100%? Like, where was I wrong? I always question these things. Like, have you given that thought, or just not really because you're 100%?
Yeah, not really.
That's okay.
If let's just say Biden was sworn in on the 20th.
Sure.
Believe it or not, there's weird scenarios where that could be overturned.
Okay.
We have the.
So at what point?
At
what point? My point is this: is it April? What point is it where you're like, okay, that's an impossibility. Biden's actually going to be in for those 4 years, and maybe Trump will come back in 2024. But you come to the realization that you're like, okay, what would it be? What would it take? 6 months in the White House?
Well, let me stop you there, because that's the point.
Okay.
Trump does not come back in 2024. We don't take the House or Senate back in 2022. Once you have rigged something,
okay,
and you are the person that rigged, let's say me and you formed the Hopkins Davidson party, or the Davidson Hopkins party.
Okay.
And we controlled the machines, and we got elected.
Yes.
And we're sworn in. Would we ever let the other side win? We're in
Well,
control of the machines.
I personally think though, Rich, that Trump was not supposed to win. It wasn't that he wasn't supposed to win. It was impossible for him to win. If you look at the reactions on their faces, it was almost like things were all in place, and it was almost like a miracle or some abnormal thing that took place that shook everyone. And said, did you see the reactions? I mean, they were at the point where they're like, no, it's impossible. Like,
Are you talking about 2016?
Sorry, I'm talking about 2016. I'm saying, my personal opinion, Trump, by all accounts, based on the rigging, based on the manipulation, based on the whole system, it was an impossibility. It's okay, we've got this covered. And something took place where they're like, what the hell just happened? Like they were starstruck. They're like, they were all, remember when Bush said, they said, hey, are you going to win this election coming up? Or are you going to lose? They're like, no. He's like, no, like, I'm not going to lose. Like, remember how serious, you know that clip where he's like, no, like, I'm not going to lose. Like, he was so sure. It was almost like something was in place. My point is this, that something took place, in my opinion, that shook everyone, and they're like, what in the world? What do we do now? And you could just see them go frantic. They instantly went into impeachment. They instantly started protests. They have not let up for the entire 4 years. Like, they were insane, having a temper tantrum, but they instantly went into like panic mode. Like, we've never had this happen in years and years and years. We've always kind of had that under control. Bush, Obama, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? I personally don't think that Bush was much of a Christian or whatever.
Most.
Sorry?
What most people forget was in 2016, it started just a couple of days later. You had these kooky idiot actors putting together these videos saying, if you're an elector in the state, you can vote for anyone as long as they were on the ballot, trying to get them to switch from Trump to Jill Stein or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it started. But who was the guy? You might know who this is. He claimed to be a preacher. He worked in the oil industry, and he was around elites all the time, I believe, in Alaska.
Oh, yeah. Classic YouTuber. What was his name? Oh, my goodness. I got sucked into him. Like, I used to watch him like religiously. Oh, what was his name? That's a good trivia, man. He was so intriguing, his stories and listening to him. So,
well, he was before 2016. I remember watching him. I always had this weird thing. I was like, if he's a preacher, why is he with all these evil elites? That was always
the weird part. I know it struck me weird. That was like, he's like, but God graced me to.
Intel was good.
It was very good.
But anyway, he said there is no way that Hillary Clinton is not going to win this election. And then, of course, she lost. And then he came back. It took him like a week or two before he came back on. And he said after the election, when it was obvious that she lost, he sent an email to his contact or his elite, whatever, and said, you said that Trump couldn't win. What happened?
Yeah.
And he said it took a week before he got a reply. And his reply was 2 words: God intervened.
Yeah.
And I believe that's what it was. Now, I think they've been doing the shaving operation ever since they've had the ability to have electronic. In fact, I was reading about it in the Navy in the 80s, which was considered a nut right-wing conspiracy publication. Everything was in paper print then. But I used to get this thing because my mother's lawyer used to get it, and I read it once and was intrigued by it. But anyway, it was a very patriotic paper. And they called it vote scam, how these machines could shave, certain percentages and this, that, and the other. And I really think it's been going on since then. Yeah. And my understanding is in 2016 that the person that was in control of the machines, it was George H.W. Bush. And Hillary Clinton, somewhere between 9 and 9:30 p.m. Eastern on election night, called him up and said, you need to help me. In other words, she wanted him to go in and manipulate the machines. Mm-hmm. And if you'll recall, Trump was even way ahead in Virginia. But right after, somewhere between 9:30 and 10 o'clock, all of a sudden his lead was going away in Virginia. Mm-hmm. And my understanding is and this is somebody else that was always close to the Clintons, he said that he was able to fix close states like Virginia and maybe 1 or 2 others. But because the amount of people that supported Trump really shocked them, they didn't have an algorithm to handle Michigan, Pennsylvania, the other swing states that went to Trump and gave him the election. They just couldn't do it. It wasn't enough They didn't have enough control to do it. And that, what's weird is they thought they had that taken care of this time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they all stopped at 3 different time zones in the country, or 4 different time zones, which is all we have. If you exclude Alaska and Hawaii, they stopped counting in all these swing states all at the same time.
I know.
And when they all started counting again, zoom, there goes Biden with 98% of the vote out of this county.
There's so many instances. There's so many instances of corruption and fraud. Like it's insane. I mean, all the affidavits. I mean, there's just so much evidence. I mean, I don't think anyone debates that. The question is, are they going to be able to pull it off in the long run? And I guess we're going to find out very soon how corrupt the system is, and if they're going to be able to pull off probably the greatest coup that we've ever seen, if they can successfully pull this off. And I pray and I hope that it doesn't happen. And I'll be cheering left, right, and center if it turns out the way that you're saying. I mean, I will be rejoicing, and I will go to a whole new level of Trump support. I mean, if I was a little behind the scenes with Trump support late to the game, I will go on a whole new level. I don't care what anyone says about me. At that point, I'll be like, guys, seriously, like literally the blessing and that 4 extra years, honestly, like so much in my opinion is going to be done. I just look at the big picture, and it's not about Trump at all. It's really not. It's about someone standing against the entire system, which he truly is. And quite honestly, I mean, Rob Skiba, there's been huge people that have believed the whole system was rigged, and they have come around, they have woke up to going, you know what? This time is different. Yes, it's been rigged all the time, but guys, something is different. Something has changed. They at least acknowledge the fact that this is not normal, and something is different. And it's not because Trump is great at all, but something is different. Rob Skiba, there's so many people. It blew my mind just in the last 6 months how many just started going blink. They're like, wait a minute, no, they wouldn't listen to anyone going, guy, you're like. Rob Skiba got so much attack. He got more attack than he got on Flat Earth, I would say. Man, when he came out with Flat Earth and he was just looking into it, people lost their minds on him. Well, when he started actually questioning and getting into more pro kind of Trump talk and just looking into the election and maybe voting, he got decimated. The whole idea that you would dare even vote. And I'm going like, guys, are we falling for the biggest lie in the world where we get to the point where we're like, my vote doesn't matter, I'm not going to vote. You know what I mean? To me, I'm like, well, why don't you vote for your local? Like Rich said at the beginning of this broadcast, guys, you don't just have to vote there. You could vote in your own city. I mean, there's many places to vote, but the question is, we just sat back and said, oh, it's all corrupt, let's not do anything. We need to I'll tell you one thing, my whole message would be, guys, let's get massively active everywhere. In education, get massively involved, run for whatever you need to run any which way, but get involved. Don't take this idea that's like, well, it's all rigged and stuff. It's not all quite rigged, and we're going to see that play out as well, too.
See, and that's the problem. Because if nothing changes and Biden gets in there, the over half of the country will know, and it is. It's 74%. I think this is the latest I heard of Republicans say and I'm sure that's way low. Say the election was rigged. 30% of Democrats say it was, and about 50-50 on independents. And you ask the vast majority of those people, 9 out of 10 will say, "Well, it's rigged. I'm not going to vote anymore." That House in 2022. You're not going to take back the presidency in 2024 because you're not going to have 1/10 of the people show up that showed up this time. And if your vote didn't matter, why did they have all these backup ballots hidden under tables that they pulled out at 3 a.m. And then shoved them through the machines 5, 6, 7 times to change the outcome? If it's the same both parties, then why would they care who's in there?
There's a lot of moderate Democrats out there that are saying, whoa, this is not what I signed up for. This is way off. They're actually starting to question their own party and saying, this is not Democrat. This is not left. This is insanity. There's a lot of people that, again, remember, it was the Trump focus. When Trump is not the focus, they can clearly look at the situation going, do I want this for my children? Do I want this for America? Do I really, truly want this direction of teaching everyone that white people are evil and that America, needs to be rewritten? And I think it will be surprising how many Democrats, the moderate Democrats, that say, yeah, no, I'm out. You know what I mean? That's going to start taking place as well. So I can see a scenario where it's not just the numbers. I think there's going to be a lot of numbers when they see how insane these guys are going to go if they take it. And they're going to go, So 2024 could still be interesting. I mean, you could say, they could rig it. But I'll tell you one thing. It was rigged before Trump got in. And for whatever reason, miraculous and a hand of God, he was able to override it. And if that's the will of God and it happens that way again for whatever reason, it can happen. So I think regardless if Trump is even out, he's not out. He's still going to be a major player and a thorn in their side. And quite honestly, I think it's going to get very interesting in ways. He can go head to head with Fox. He can rewrite the whole media network. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen even in the event that he does walk out for whatever reason. But let's concentrate on the fact that we've got a few more days. You're going to be coming back. Everyone's tuned in tonight. They're probably excited to find out what transpires on Wednesday. We'll be meeting back here on Saturday. Guys, don't miss it. It's going to be totally insane. I think it's going to be crazy, the amount of stuff we're going to be talking about next Saturday. But we should wrap up. Thanks so much, Rich, for coming on. Really appreciate your time and your insight. And sorry if I was a little passionate, but I'm just so wired and passionate based on the situation. I know a couple people were mentioning that. I just want to apologize because sometimes I can get to the point where I get a little interruptive. And honestly, I want to be respectful of making sure that your insight and your wisdom is definitely heard. But we're going to have you back. And guys, we're going a lot of time over. So I want to make sure that Rich has tons of time to really explain it and detail it out, because this is just starting and it's going to get really interesting a week from today. We're going to come back to the show and we're going to take it to the next level. So really excited about it. Thanks everyone for tuning in tonight, and blessings to you. Take care. And pray God help America. And honestly, stand behind the fact that things are going to change, and not necessarily regardless of the outcome. Is it going to be a change for the bad in the whole kingdom way of looking at the whole aspect of things? I just think when we're looking at the world, we've got to look at it in the big picture, that we're here for a purpose. We're here to be the light in the darkness. We're here to share the good news regardless of the situation. Understand your mandate, understand your purpose, and honestly pray and say, God, use me to glorify you, to bring people to the saving knowledge of your son, Jesus. So thanks everyone. Good night. God bless.